Hey folks, welcome to another Money Space with me, Kalu Aja. Of course, on this space, we're talking money, the economy, finance, and we want to make it personal to you, bring all those topics that you hear about in the news and bring it to you in a way that you can identify and use to be a better investor, right? This week, we're talking enabling economic development via transportation infrastructure. In essence, we want to look at how the transportation infrastructure in Nigeria is set up and how can we, should we say, use that or build an infrastructure that allows us to generate economic growth. You know, we don't just want economic growth, we want economic development. We see every year we're building this road or we're building that railway or we're building this airport. Are we doing it right? What's the best way to sort of like utilize these resources? Nigeria has a lot of crude oil reserves, crude oil revenues, but we have very, very poor infrastructure. It's not just a function of building a good road here. It's just the interconnectivity and again, how that interconnectivity is designed in the state and local government areas to then generate that growth. That's essentially what we want to talk about today. If you're old enough, you remember something called DFRI. I forgot the full meaning. I think it was Directorate for Food, Roads and Rural Infrastructure, DFRI. And the idea back then was that we had to build from the rural areas. We had to build, even if it's just dirt roads. So go to the rural areas and then build out dirt roads or just infrastructure from the rural areas to the little towns so that we can get food transported from those rural areas to the towns. That helps food inflation. That generates wealth for the farmers. That generates economic activity. It boosts our SME. It even reduces crime and terrorism. So if you look at what's happening to Nigeria, if we had addressed and kept on with the DFRI pace from the 80s, perhaps we wouldn't have had the insurgency, the banditry, the kidnapping that we have now. So I want to bring in a guy. I mean, Tonami is a guy I follow on Twitter. He talks a lot about transportation. I like his take on it. I'm surprised I don't know what he does in his day job, but he does bring an insight into it. Also, I shared the rail master plan for Nigeria. I'm going to share the road and the waterways master plan for Nigeria so that we can talk around it, so we can get a visual on what we're talking about. So if you look at my Twitter space, I just shared the rail master plan, and I'm going to ask Tonami to just speak around these issues. So Tonami, let me have you on mute. Just do a quick intro. And then I have a few questions for you. And then, of course, if guys want to ask questions or want to send a DM or need clarifications, I'm sure you can do that. So, Tonami, go ahead and unmute yourself. Just give us a brief intro. Tonami, I think you're muted. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm not sure. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yeah, go for it, bro.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kalu, for having me here. My name is Tonami, and in terms of my day job, I work for the electric utility here in California. But I just have interest in transport, and I have studied a lot about it over the years. So I guess that's my background, and I guess I'm open to whatever questions you want to ask regarding the topic or where we want to. I'll go with it.
Tom, let's start from rail. I just shared the rail master plan. I'm sure if you guys can see it, go to my last tweet. You would see the last I just shared now the Nigerian rail master plan. So I know I saw a comment that you did. Enugu State government was going to connect a rail from Enugu State to the port in Onne. That's a beside. In general, right, if you look at the rail master plan, we are still operating the rail lines that the colonial government built for Nigeria. So in essence, we have this big line from Lagos all the way to Kano. That's a standard gauge. We also have from Port Harcourt all the way to Maiduguri. They're all narrow gauge. From Lagos to Kano, from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri are all narrow gauge. Now, from Lagos to Ibadan is standard gauge. We've upgraded that standard gauge, Lagos to Ibadan. From Abuja to Kaduna, standard gauge. Then we have this railway just in the middle of Nigeria, not connected to anybody, from Warri to Itakpe, also standard gauge. if you look at it, Tonami, you see that we haven't built anything outside what the quote unquote British built for us. The British built these rail lines in the 19th. We haven't built any horizontal rail lines. These were all built to take goods out from the north, from the east to the port, and to be exported to the UK. We haven't contributed to date, and we are still running narrow gauge, and we just have a very, very few standard gauge. So just in terms of your view on rail, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What can we do better to drive economic growth?
Yeah, so in terms of what Nigeria is doing right for rail, at least it is in the consideration. So at least there's a plan. So that's the right part. The wrong part is what is being prioritized and what is being built, and also how the infrastructure that is built is operated. So those are the things that are being done wrong. In terms of the routing, there's a tendency. It's not just rail. It's the same thing with the road network. There's a tendency for Nigeria to not course correct. We stick to old plans, even though those plans are outdated. So yes, it made sense when the colonial administration were building these rail lines for their administration. But Nigeria has to look at how the geography of the current population is. What's the population distribution? What is the movement of different items regarding food, people, goods, and then base our plan on that. But we just keep sticking to this colonial plan of Lagos to Kano, Lagos to Kano, Lagos to Kano, Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, and we don't reevaluate. We don't make any corrections, and if we do make adjustments to it, it's like very the adjustments don't really add value. They're very minimal, and they don't add value to the larger picture. So for the rail, yes, we don't have no east. We don't have any east-west rail linkages, and the only I don't know if you can call that an east-west linkage. The linkage between Kaduna and Jos.
That wouldn't count.
But when we want to build a rail, okay. So there's another thing too, is how we phase infrastructure. So there's something about rail where until you connect two critical points, that rail line once built is as good as useless. So if you just build, so we have this, like, for example, the link between Abuja and Kaduna.
Yeah.
That is not a useful distance for rail to connect. And you build it in such a way that it is islanded. And once it's built, the utility is very minimal. So that's why that road, that corridor it's not meeting any ridership expectation. It's not transporting any goods. It's not doing anything. It's just there. But you have to pay the loans on that road. You're not getting any utility out of it because we don't phase properly. So you want to connect the critical points, and you want to do the entire corridor for those critical points.
First of all, so in essence, if you're going to do Abuja to Kaduna, you want to do the Kano, you want to do the Jos, you want to do the Maiduguri, and it's like a hub and spoke approach, more or less.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say we want to stick to the colonial plan. We want to build Lagos to Kano. Fine, let's stick to that. If we want to phase that properly, the critical cities along those corridors are Lagos, Abuja, and Kano. So if you're going to phase that project, the right way to phase that project is 2 phases: Lagos to Abuja, Abuja to Kano. Any other phase implementation, you're wasting resources because that resource is going to lie underutilized. So that is a major problem that we have when we phase things. So we did Lagos to Ibadan, and then
we stopped.
We stopped, and then Ibadan to Abuja is blank. And then, despite the fact that Lagos to Ibadan it is a short distance, but it is an okay corridor. I mean, it has some utility, but then we don't operate it properly. We run only 2 trains a day, the same way the trains, even less than what the trains were running back in the colonial era.
Gotcha.
So those are the failings that we run into when we try to build or implement real infrastructure in Nigeria.
Let me give you numbers. And I just shared a tweet, guys. If you want to just go to my Twitter page, I just shared a tweet now. It's on the real economics in Nigeria. And you can see what they've done here. I'm not sure who did this study, so I can give credit, but it wasn't done by me. I don't know if you did it, but I can give credit. It's real economics, right? It talks about the rail lines in Nigeria. So what they've done here is to pick the existing rail lines, right? Lagos to Port Harcourt, maybe Port Harcourt to Enugu. They've done the distance, they've done the annual revenues, and they've done the line density. So it goes to your point you're making, to learn that if you want to build rails, you want to look at the density where there's, should we say, consumers of the rail lines, so that the lines pay themselves. So essentially, if you are building between 2 points, you want to build 2 points that have got commuters that can move rail, freight, and people. So that line pays itself. Now, if you look at what Nigeria has invested in, and guys, if you look at the chart, it will help you because you can see visually what I'm talking about. Nigeria has built, since the white man left, we've built Lagos to Ibadan, standard gauge. We've built Abuja to Kaduna, standard gauge. We've also built Warri to Itakpe, standard gauge. Everything else in Nigeria was built by the British. Everything else. So your Lagos to Kano, your Port Harcourt to Maiduguri were all built by the British. We've just maybe made the lines better. But the standard gauge is just Lagos to Ibadan, Kaduna to Abuja, and Warri to Itakpe. Now, if you come to that chart, I don't know if you can see that chart I'm talking about. They have scored that the most viable line you could have in Nigeria, the most viable rail line you can have in Nigeria, is going to be Lagos to Port Harcourt via Onitsha. They put a line density there because that's where you have the greatest amount of movement in Nigeria, both freight and people. After then, you have Lagos to Ibadan. Then you have Lagos to Calabar, again via Onitsha. Then you have Lagos to Abuja via Minna. Then Lagos to Port Harcourt, you have Port Harcourt to Enugu, Port Harcourt to Abuja. If you go to the very, very end, you see Warri to Itakpe. It's in the middle of nowhere. That rail line was built to move iron ore between Ajaokuta. It's not a commercial line, but we spent billions in dollars to activate that line. So it goes to what you're saying, that we're not building these things in terms of looking at the numbers, the economics. We're building it to do regionalism or want to maintain a campaign promise. So do you want to, if you can see that chart, Tanami, that's a very, very good point for us to then look at the economics of where we are deploying funds and where we should have deployed funds.
Yeah, I can see the chart. So that chart, I created that chart based just calculating ridership based.
So you did it?
Yeah, I created. Yeah,
Great, excellent. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Based on the populations and using a gravity model to see how what the expected ridership will be based on the distance and the population of those different nodes. So based on that, a line connecting Lagos, Onitsha, and Port Harcourt is the most viable rail corridor because that is the highest density concentration of population, and that's the highest traffic corridor. And it also helps kind of buttress this is also the traffic analysis that have been done by AFDB, and in that analysis, they're looking at truck traffic. The most congested, or the corridor with the highest amount of truck traffic is between Lagos and Onitsha. So you have that corridor on that Benin or Expressway that is heavily congested with trucks, because that is where the traffic is. So if we use these types of analysis to make our decisions on where we put our money in terms of infrastructure, we're going to make better decisions. And for some reason, Nigeria is not putting the data ahead of making those decisions. The decisions are just made, and then they just go with the decision, regardless of whatever value is gotten from that piece of infrastructure. So if we're going by this, what the country should be doing, like all hands on deck, is trying to connect Lagos, Onitsha, and Port Harcourt.
But very real. This is very real.
Yeah. This is by rail, and on that corridor, the Lagos Calabar is Calabar is just an extension of the Lagos to Port Harcourt corridor. You branch off of, you use the same corridor from Lagos, Onitsha, Aba, Port Harcourt, and then you branch off of Aba for the extension to Calabar. That will be a short extension. So by building that corridor, you're able to get the extension to Calabar by a short branch. I think the Lagos Port Harcourt is about 675 kilometers. Yeah. The branch to Aba is only 129 or 130 kilometers. So it's a very short branch. Okay. So then you feed that traffic onto the same corridor. So you get this much utility out of building that corridor. And that is what we should be doing. Okay. And in terms of getting, so that gives you the most viable east-west corridor on the country. Gotcha. And then when you're looking at the north-south, getting Lagos to Abuja, the current plan, I would say the current plan is fine. Like the current plan, they're going from Lagos, Ibadan, Ilorin, Minna, Abuja, and then extension to Kano. That's fine, and that's a corridor that should be built. But the one with the highest priority definitely is Lagos, Onitsha, Port Harcourt.
Let's touch roads. So we've agreed that the Lagos to the east to west railway is the most viable, has the most cargo. Again, just Lagos to Ibadan is still part of that link, right? What about roads? Right now we have this quote-unquote coastal road, a brand new coastal road. Before the coastal road, we have the east-west road. Again, guys, if you go on the street, I shared the Nigerian 25-year strategic vision for roads as well, right? So we have the east-west road. We have the the proposed coastal railway from China. When that was issued, I think in 2013, that was the largest contract ever issued to a Chinese corporation ever by a foreign government. It was about for 13 billion, if I remember, back then in 2013. We now have the coastal road. So we have the coastal road, we have the east-west road itself, then we have the coastal railway, all three of them. Is there any prioritization which should happen first? Should the roads happen first for the rails? I don't think we have money to build both of them together. Or can we build both of them together? What's your take on the road versus rail connecting the east and the west? Because that's where the trade is.
Yeah, so in terms of road and rail, they are complementary. So rail, that in terms of rail needs the most, you need more prioritization in terms of what corridor you need to build when you build rail. Because the thing with rail is, in order for that infrastructure to be utilized optimally, it needs to be in a very high traffic density corridor.
This is road or rail?
That's rail.
Okay.
It needs to be in a very high traffic density corridor. So you pick a high traffic density corridor and you build a rail link, but you also need a road link, because the road allows you to disperse. You have more junctions. It allows you to distribute. Like you can get in, you can feed in more. You can feed in distributed traffic onto the corridor. On rail, you have like stations along it, and only those stations have access. But the road can bring in those, can act as a feeder onto the railway, and the railway just acts as the main trunk line. For the highways, there should be, like, if we want to build, enable economic development, we have to build both. We have to build both rail and highways. But in terms of the highways, we also have to build the right highways. So let me go over the highways a little bit. Currently, we have 4 north-south highway corridors in Nigeria, and those, we have the A1 that is going from Sokoto to Jeba, Ilorin, Shagamu, Lagos, and then east of that you have the A2 from Daura, Kano, Abuja, Benin City, Warri, Port Harcourt, and then you have the A3 going from Maiduguri, Bauchi, Jos, Makurdi, Aba, Port Harcourt. And then you have the A4, which is going from Maiduguri, Jalingo, Ogoja, and Calabar. So those are our main north-south roads. Just as we lack east-west rail linkage, Nigeria lacks good east-west highway linkages. So if you look at the east-west, the only major east-west route is east-west road going from Lagos, Benin, Onitsha. And then there's a huge gap before you get to, there's a huge gap until you get to Kogi before there's another bridge to cut across. So, and then when you look at traffic, if you want to, in terms of prioritizing what highways to build or where to put money into, you have to look at where our bottlenecks are and how to relieve those bottlenecks. So on our highway network, there are like 3 major bottlenecks on the highways. The number one bottleneck, despite the fact that it's not a lot of traffic, it's not as much traffic as on the east-west side, but because there's a scarcity of access, the Lokoja axis is the number one bottleneck in the entire Nigeria highway system.
How do you mean? Go ahead, explain that, please.
Because all traffic, you have a huge traffic demand coming from, in terms of goods, you have a lot of agricultural products coming from the middle belt, the northern part, and going towards the west, the southwest, going towards Lagos. And the only route, so all that traffic has to be routed through Lokoja to get to Lagos. And then you have all the traffic from the southern part of Nigeria, and also goods moving between the south and the northern part of Nigeria. That's from Port Harcourt, southeast region. They have to go through the same Lokoja axis. So everything gets clogged up on there. So in terms of when we want to prioritize highways, is how do we relieve that bottleneck? Same thing with the Lagos Onitsha. Onitsha is a huge bottleneck, and how do we relieve it? Yes, they've built this second Niger bridge, and that's a good initiative. But that's just the bridge. It still dumps traffic onto the same road, so it sort of solves the problem. But the entire stretch has to be completed to get the value of that second Niger bridge, and we need another linkage, like in between those two. We need another linkage, like from between Ida and Agenibode. That is like a prime spot for an east-west highway linkage, and that's something that we should be building. If we look at how we want to relieve all those bottlenecks, if we build a diagonal highway from Lagos to Maiduguri, cut through all the north-south highways, get a bypass around Lokoja, you have a new route that all that traffic can feed through and actually relieve a lot of the corridor. And then from there, from Akure, you can build an east-west link through Ida and Agenibode to Enugu and Abakaliki, and you have an east-west corridor, and that links up to what the federal government is currently building with the Abuja to Calabar highway. And so that relieves the bottlenecks within the existing network and generates new economic activity. Now, if you look at what the government is building with the Sokoto to Badagry, it goes through a corridor that doesn't serve any of the existing population. And the same thing with the Lagos-Calabar highway. And that's another thing with the not changing plans. Lagos-Calabar and Sokoto-Badagry highways, those are highway plans from the 1970s. And we, rather than updating our highway master plan and focusing on what we need now or what will be useful now, we just say, okay, so we made those plans in the 1970s. Today, they don't serve.
Well, yeah. I mean,
they don't serve us well.
You're being diplomatic, so I get it. But again, if you look at Nigeria, this is the year 2025, right? And Nigeria got independence in 1960. All the roads and rails we have, apart from this huge investment we did in the 1970s, I think it was under Gowon when we built the Lagos Ibadan and the Lagos Benin, is still almost the same. We've just maybe expanded, added one lane. There's been no massive, like you're talking about a diagonal road. We had the money to build Lagos to Maiduguri and Calabar to Sokoto. We didn't do it. So it's what we're managing what we didn't do. Now we don't have any money to do this diagonal thing you're talking about. But before I let lots of folks on speak, let me bring you to railways, to waterways, because we've done rail a bit, we've done roads a bit. We're going to come back to them. Look at waterways. Again, I shared the waterways map in Nigeria. It's possible to go from Kaduna to Asaba by water. Possible to go to Yola to Asaba by water. I mean, if you really invest, you can go from Gusau to Asaba by water. I mean, it sounds improbable, but if Nigeria was Amsterdam or America, they would have done it by now. From Gusau, you can go from Gusau to Sokoto, then to Birnin Kebbi, through Kainji, through Mina, through to Lokoja, and then through to Asaba. I hear you talk about Lokoja bypass. There are barges. We can put an inland port in Lokoja that will just take barges directly from Yenagoa or Warri straight to Lokoja and then up north via the water, not rails, not roads. And I think it will be cheaper. We're not laying rails. You can't go and steal the the rail guards and all that kind of stuff. So is there any role for waterways? This is going to be the last question before I let others speak. For waterways to integrate this road, rail, and water in Nigeria. Again, guys, the infographic is sharing in case you want to follow the picture I'm looking at. Tony, you got the floor.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of waterways, the waterways can definitely augment our transportation network. The thing is, like, each mode serves a different utility. So if the waterways is good for like low value, high weight commodities, like if you're moving gravel, building materials, cement, if you're moving steel, if you're moving ore, and so it's that the waterways make a very good, also agricultural products, because those tend to have a lot of weight. And water has it's cheaper per kilogram to move
on water.
On water, but you have it's not as fast, so you tend to move goods that are not very time sensitive onto the barges that are heavier and non-time sensitive. Rail and road is faster. Road has more distribution points, access points, than rail has. Rail has fewer access points. But everything, you can integrate everything together. In terms of our waterways, so in the northern reaches of the countries, yes, those are rivers, but there are lots of rapids, so they're not like actually connected. The only like useful waterway section is the from the Gulf to Lokoja, and then you go east on the Benue River. So that's the only, I would say, if we want to use a major water corridor. So that's the only one. But it needs a lot of investment. It needs constant dredging.
We could have dredged this thing. I mean, when we had the money that we didn't know what to do with the money.
The one thing with dredging, it is not a one-time thing. Because of the gradient of the slope, and also the just the nature of the rivers, you have to constantly dredge. So that's the maintenance that's needed to maintain those waterways. So you have to constantly dredge them, and then you have a limitation on how the amount of draft that you get in the dry season. So that will also reduce the carrying capacity of the river. But yes, it can be and it should be incorporated into the transportation network. For example, we see the I've always pushed back against all the agitation for deep sea port in the eastern part of Nigeria, because you have to build infrastructure where it makes sense. In terms of port infrastructure, focusing on the same thing with focusing on bottlenecks. Focusing on bottlenecks generates more value than spreading your spend on new ports. So if we focus on the bottleneck that is Lagos, so that is where all the investment should go for ports. And then we have an interconnected system where, for example, you have the big ships who come to Lekki, and then the barges will leave Lekki and distribute to the other smaller ports in Sapele, Warri, Port Harcourt, Calabar. And also the barges will take some of that cargo upriver to Onitsha, Lokoja, and you have a system where the rest of Nigeria can still be served, but we are doing it more efficiently because no major carrier is going to call at some port in Ibaka because that's not where the demand is. They're going where the demand is. So all the major ships are going to call at Lagos. So what we need to do is how to integrate that into the rest of the system. So,
and I just shared Tommy, like a barge, these flat barges that are used in Germany. They can go on very, very low draft. If you look on the timeline, I just shared one of those barges. Again, I think we need two ports, one in Lagos and the one at the far side of Nigeria, maybe in Calabar or Akwa Ibom, somewhere like that. We already have the Sapele ones that are smaller when compared to Lagos. So you have two entry points, just for redundancies, right? Again, you can have a deep sea port in Lagos, in Lekki, have a deep sea port in Abak. The deep sea port in Abak serves the northeast side. The deep sea port in Lekki serves the northwest side of the country. And you have that redundancy. You offload the goods in the deep sea port. It's transshipped via these inner ports into the inner cities, via rail and all that. It's possible, it's possible. I just think that in terms of a comprehensive infrastructure that addresses rail, waterways, roads together, I don't think we're there. We always have a minister who will come in and say, I'm going to build airport. That's Minister of Aviation. We then have a minister that will say, I'm going to build roads. We have a Minister of Transport, so I'm going to build a rail. We should have had by now a coordinating Minister of Infrastructure that will say what we want to achieve. If we're going towards exports, then the infrastructure should be targeted at where we are making the largest export, right? Cocoa, cashew nuts. Bring the infrastructure to bring these goods out of the rural areas to the towns where they are warehoused, either via rail or waterways, and then take to the ports. If we're doing local consumption, then east-west roads to move those goods and people across Nigeria so we can consume. But it seems that, and the roads are a great example, and we're going to get others speak now. The roads are a good example. We have the east-west road. It's abandoned. That's very, very important. It's abandoned. We have the east-west coastal highway, railway. It's abandoned. Now we have the coastal road. What's the difference with the coastal road and the east-west road? The minister just said now they're going to move the road more into the hinterland because, of course, you can't build roads or bridges on the swamps in 2 years. It's not possible. Anyone think that we're going to build a coastal railway in 8 years doesn't understand how roads are built in a swamp. So, Tom, I don't know if you want to respond or let me let others come in now. I'm trying to have more questions. But my issue is the integration, looking at it as Nigeria as a whole, and then to integrate rail, road, airports, waterways into one, and then attach it to the economic plan of Nigeria. We seem not to be doing that, and that's really my issue.
Yeah, definitely. There's the route of the coastal road is just like the terrain is that's a nightmarish terrain.
Yes,
Looking at the ESIA,
correct.
The going through all that swamp, all the multiple bridges that are going to be needed, swamp and marshland.
Yeah. I think,
and it's like there's nobody living there. It's like
but it's the point. This is the point again. If you raise this point on Twitter, if you say the road should not be built, you're going to get abuse. But the point I make again is this: the east-west road is connecting the states away from the coast. If you go to America, they have their roads on the coast, but they don't have. There's no Florida Everglades highway. There's California, scenic routes. What's on that route? There's I-5. But they don't have, in Nigeria, once you go from Lagos to Ogun, it stops. To go from that Ogun to Bayelsa, to Calabar, do you know how many bridges you're going to build? And you want to build that in 8 years with how much? 1.3 trillion. That's the Naira version of what we want to build. So it's not going to happen. We're not being pessimistic. It's just not going to happen. So maybe the money should have been spent to do the east-west road and perhaps fix up the other roads, like you're talking about Lokoja. Lokoja is more important for the food, for the inflation, than a brand new project. And again, we've not talked about the Sokoto to Lagos. It's now called an intercontinental highway or something like that. The Minister of Power uses these words, and so. But hang there, Tonami. Let's get others to speak. Get Afribull. Afri, how you doing? You've heard what we've been speaking about with Tonami, talking about the infrastructure in Nigeria and how it's not really tied to economic growth. How we want to build a road, but that road is not tied to what our economic plan is. If we want a $1 trillion economy in now, I think it's going to be in 8 years now. What should we be investing? That's really what we're talking about. So, Afribull, you've got the floor, sir.
Hi, Carlo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You hear me clearly? That's the biggest problem.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, I think, it's a timely topic. Infrastructure is always key. Targeted infrastructure development is always key to economic growth. And I'm actually grateful to have this speaker here on today because I actually have a few questions as far as just figures. So you've mentioned a bit about choke points. And I want to understand myself just the cost to the Nigerian economy. If you do have those figures on hand, the cost to the Nigerian economy of the current choke points. That's the first question. Second question is if you're painting a picture to government, to politicians, what do you see as the biggest prospect of unlocking value at the moment? Let's say if we had, because currently it's always going. Government budget is always going to be limited. If you had to target certain projects or certain areas to have the largest impact now, what areas would that be? And do you have a sense of figures as well on that, on how much value we're leaving on the table by having by targeting these specific projects? So I'll just give you those first two questions if you can. Give us some light on that.
Thanks, Afribull, for those questions. So for the first one, in terms of the costs for the choke points, I don't have any value on what's the costs of those choke points to the current Nigerian economy. And also for the other one, in terms of the second question about the biggest prospect to unlock value, if it is for all the different forms of infrastructure in Nigeria, something that will unlock the most value right now, if we just put money on it, would be a Lagos to Maiduguri highway. That will unlock because it doesn't just serve Lagos and Maiduguri, it serves a vast amount of the population along the corridor. So that will unlock a lot of value. I don't know what the monetary value is, but definitely that would unlock a lot across different value chains within Nigeria, and I would say a second to that would be a rail linkage between Lagos, Onitsha, and Port Harcourt. So those are the two items that I would say will unlock the most value for the country in terms of infrastructure.
Afri, is there a reason why you want the monetary value? Just curious.
No, because generally speaking, with infrastructure, if we're being realistic, government budgets are always limited. And in painting a picture, it's clear that infrastructure is going to be required. But in painting a picture to politicians or ministers, let's assume they were doing this properly. Understanding the daily cost, monthly cost, or what some sort of quantifiable figure on what leaving for infrastructure in certain areas, certain choke codes as they are, really kind of brings it home for a lot of people, especially maybe politicians who don't really understand the importance of it, why it's so immediate. And also then we targeted infrastructure development. It's more like, again, when you put value, and you see it in these studies, infrastructure studies, what it means. You take you take the UK, for example, when you had the high speed, the HS2 debate that's been going on for 10 years, that most of the people supporting that project focus on how much value has been unlocked in terms of figures, in terms of the economy, was the contribution to the cities that rail was going to pass through. And that really got over the line when it was being debated. So that's primarily why I want to get a sense if those figures, I know it's not easy data to come across, but it paints a picture when you put a sort of a monetary value on it.
Yeah.
And it brings it home, especially because we understand that infrastructure is important, but when you're looking at hard figures, it makes it easier for, ideally should make it easier for these politicians.
I would say this, if I was with the president and I was with the Senate and they said, listen, how much would this cost? I would say there's no project that's going to be listed that's going to cost you less than 2 billion. When I mean 2 billion, I mean to start, not to complete. You have to have 2 billion funding lined up to start, not to complete. It's might get to 10, but have 2. That's number one. So if you say how do you pay for it, you're going to get into the moralities. It's going to be more of what's the benefit. So imagine if, for instance, we built now a 10-lane, because we have a 10-lane expressway from the Apapa port. It goes all the way from Apapa port to Ojota. It stops at Ojota. Yeah. It doesn't go left. Ojota is going north, right? Then east is going to the toll gate. If you build from that toll gate point in Lagos a 10-lane with a railway, 2 railway lines, 5 road lines, from that point in Ojota, you're going all the way to Maiduguri. So you're going to go straight through Abuja to Maiduguri. Essentially, the income you are going to make in the next 50 years when your party has left office will be 50 or 100x what you spent on that road. Because there are going to be brand new towns created that we don't have today. Brand new towns created, brand new commerce. Many folks in Chad, Niger will then use that port because it's going to be just transship, go on the train all the way down. So it's a 2 billion to start, but you'll get the money back in 15 years in VAT, in CIT, and all that. That's the way to position it. But why they don't do it is because you are not going to reap the rewards in 8 years. If Tinubu wants to do it today, even if he wants to do it today, his folks are going to tell him, we don't get any votes from doing this. Because if you do it today, it's going to be the party in 30 years that will get this. I give good example. Goodluck Jonathan did the Abuja to Kaduna Express standard gauge. It was the first commercial standard gauge I understand in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. The first was the Takbe one, but that was not commercial. So that was commercial, not consumer. But when he built it, he built the rails, did everything. He needed just the icing on the cake. He left office. Buhari comes, does the icing, does the commissioning. If you go online today, you see the argument is going on who built Abuja to Kaduna Railway. So no politician in Nigeria, that's the way they think. 8 years, I won't get the glory. And once you don't think of 15, 20 years, it's gone. How long was the Three Gorges Dam built? The Three Gorges Dam in China, how long was it built? Was it built in 10 years? But if you have an 8-year cycle where your party either loses power in 4 years, or your party can stay in office, but you are going to go in 8 years, it's very difficult to do infrastructure. Very. That's just how I'll put that, yeah.
Yeah, you see the evidence today. Economic development is not an 8-year cycle. It's a 20, 30, 50 year.
And you forget about it. So it's a great question. Is that what you want to ask? Let me go down the room.
No, let him again. That was my key question.
Okay.
I have some other things, but let him go.
Perfect. All right, let me get Chuka. Chuka, your hand is up. You've got the floor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, Carlo. Good evening, Tonami. Nice one there. From what you guys have said, we can look at that the East-West Road is the most economic viable way, and mostly we are hitting on funding. So I just want to know, because you just recently about the 8 years plan and the government. Like my question just basically goes like, how can Nigeria attract private investment, like people to put the investment on this infrastructure development, looking at the kind of the government and the politics being played in the country. So to fast track the east-west rail line and the road, that's my question.
Tonami can answer, but let me also just give my opinion. I think the key idea is trust. Nigeria can raise all this money internally and also externally from her diaspora. But can you imagine which governor do you think can go to a meeting of the diaspora in, say, UK or, say, Dallas and say, I want you guys to give me $1 million. If you give me $1 million, I'm going to build a railway to connect this town to this town. And do you think, how many governors do you think in Nigeria can go to that meeting, make that promise, and get $1 million? Very, very few. Very, very few. So if you have a president that the people trust, this is really to people trust. It's not to come on Twitter and say, I support you. No. To say, if I give this president my tax money from America, from the UK, from China, either I do social investments or I buy an impact bond. If Nigeria raises an impact bond of, say, let's just say 5 billion. If you put 5 billion in the bank in America, they will pay you 4%, 5%. That's a CD, like a bond, right? Nigeria will not pay 4 5%. Nigeria currently is paying 8%. So we're paying double. But if I go to you, I'm from Ohafia, right? If I go to the people of Ohafia in America and I say, guys, I want to build a 4-lane expressway from Ohafia to Aba. It's going to cost us $1 million. I want you guys to buy my bond. This bond will only pay you 0.1%. It's called an impact bond. People will invest not because of the returns, but because there's going to be a highway there. It will help the people back home. But they will only give that money away if they trust me to take that money and build that road. So if Nigeria does an impact bond to the people that diaspora and say, guys, it's a 1% bond. Everyone investing in that 1% bond knows they are not doing it because of returns. No. You buy the bond in America, you get a tax write-off. We can organize it that way. But the Nigerians have got to trust that the politicians back home will invest that money. If there is no trust, then you have to go commercial. That's why Nigeria is paying 8% to borrow for 30 years in dollar terms. Because the Nigerian diaspora does not trust the Nigerian politicians. Go to America. How much does China borrow from our diaspora? How much does India, Pakistan borrow from our diaspora? They don't pay 8%. I'm not talking about the bonds. But when you have trust, the Koreans, how they invest back home, the Chinese, they have 1,000 talents program, the Chinese, where you can go back to China and invest your whatever. That's the problem. So if there's no trust, then people will ask you for commercials. It's not like if I know you, you block me and you say, my guy, I pay $100 for your hand. I'll give you. But if I don't know you, I'll tell you to write me positive check and add 10%. That's just it. Because I don't know you, I don't trust you. So Tonami, I don't know if you have your take on this question. I think it's a great question.
Yeah, in terms of funding for big infrastructure projects, the only way that they can get off the ground is if the government funds the project either from the budget or by taking on loans. The current Lagos Calabar Highway, they say it's 30% funded from the budget, and they haven't secured the loans yet, but supposedly they're going to get 70% of the rest of the funding from a different consortium of international lenders. In terms of bringing private investors into infrastructure, the thing with a lot of these infrastructure projects is the value is not like a highly profitable adventure, because a lot of the value is distributed across different sectors. So it's not it's not something that will be very lucrative as a private investor to put your money into. So it's going to be difficult to secure private investment to fund major infrastructure projects that we need, just because of that reason, that they're not the most lucrative forms of lucrative avenues for investment. So the government has to do the heavy lifting in funding those projects. And if you look at Nigeria in terms of all the major projects that we have, they've all been government funded, because if we wait for private investment, it's never going to happen, because the amount of money that you need to do it is a lot. And the thing is, you need to do it quickly, because the longer it takes, so if you kind of say, oh, you're going to wait, stretch out the fund, the longer it takes to execute, the more expensive it gets. So it's just more efficient for the government to either get it from the budget or get secure government loans and build the project as quickly as possible. And that way you start getting the benefits of that infrastructure to the economy from there.
And one thing, Tonami, that Nigerians have to understand is this, right? I think the mindset has to change. You know, when we had oil in the 70s, the government built everything. We had the Industrial Plan 1, 2, and 3, where governments built universities, express roads, railways, power, NITEL. That's the wrong model. You cannot develop a country with government spending. It's not been done ever. Go around the world. The role of the government is to create the atmosphere for private capital to build up infrastructure. So if you look at the United States, who built the railways, who built the roads, who built that? The government will say, we're going to do I-5. But as they're building that I-5, the private sector is coming to build restaurants on the I-5, hotels, motels on the I-5. That's what makes that project bankable. So the government can easily go borrow money from the bank and say, hey, we want to build a new express road at a lower interest rate. Because the banks see that once they build an express road, that road is bankable because there are industries on both sides. So the government's role is same with states, same with local government. Your job is not to take your budget and build a road. Your job is to take that budget and act as a guarantor, either giving sovereign guarantees or seed funding. If you look at it that way, you can build more roads. It's not to say that you can build more with less. No, it's 1 + 1 is equals to 11. You take your FARC, you tell the private sector, anyone that comes to build a road, we will pay you. And if we don't pay you, we're going to use our FARC and we're going to keep it to the CBN to give you a sovereign guarantee. So Jos Berger knows that if they come to your state, they are going to get paid. Because they are going to get paid, they reduce their cost of lending or cost of borrowing, because they know that once they deploy to that state and they build 100 kilometers or whatever, they will get paid. So once they take that away, that uncertainty goes away, the cost per mile in your state falls. So you have to use that. And Nigerians have to get to learn, we have to pay tolls. If you don't want to pay tolls, there's advertising. You can build the road and say only the guys that pay to the government would advertise on both sides on the runway. MTN is building Enugu, so it's Onitsha to Enugu Express Road. MTN is building it, not the government. And MTN is getting their money back from tax breaks. So it's the same way the government has got to operate. The government alone cannot build roads anywhere. So copy what MTN is doing. You go back to your local government area, you tell the biggest guy in your local government area, maybe it's a bar, maybe it's a manufacturing company, and the law's already there. Say, if you build this road, there will be absolutely no taxes for you for the next 5 years. That's the way we have to think. Because the government, how much is our budget? We're on a deficit budget. Guys, I don't want to depress you, but 100% of the revenues you get from crude oil and gas, 100% goes to pay salaries, pensions, and allowances of only federal workers. 100%. So any money you see being spent on infrastructure or being spent on debt service is all borrowed. 100%. We're not an oil producing nation. Leave that one aside. Just pack that one aside. We've got to survive on growing the economy, encouraging more private sector guys to come in and then invest in the country. Sheikh C, you've got the floor. Tonami is here. Go ahead. Sheikh Chukudi Iben Analo. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, hi, Carlo and Tonami and every other person here. So mine is more like on the question side, because to an extent, sometimes I am a bit like lost with thoughts why certain things don't happen, but I'm just trying to, because I've been following Tonami for a while and I know he's very good with transportation. So you did mention, Tonami, that you would rather invest in the chokeholds, and then in terms of when you talk about the river line transportation. And then Carlo also mentioned in terms of going from the far west to the far east side. But my thought is, if we're looking at connecting the inland and the inner town, what do you call them, like River Niger and the River Benue axis, would the ports around the delta not be much more viable? What's I know that yes, because they are very they need a lot of dredging and maintenance and all of that. But would that not be a favorable point? Because from there we can be able to access a lot more, in the sense that, one, you can connect the rail lines on both sides, and you can also be able to now use barges to be able to convey more inland and upland to the north and all of that other places. So I just wanted to know about that. Why is that not something that's being considered? And considering the fact that these places were ports in the past, and that, then also I want to just understand in terms of rail lines in Nigeria, what would you recommend in terms of currently? I know that there's the Warri Kogi State line that has already been done, in terms of linking that, because I continually believe that there is a whole lot of economic activity happening in the southeast. And if we talk about one of the easiest points, will that not be an easy access to be able to connect that rail line and connect it, considering that that particular port, rail line also is not too far from a port line? I think it's the Cocoa Port line, so within the Delta State axis. So I just wanted to see what's your picture in terms of Delta State being a significant port investment, and what do you think in terms of costing, if you just have an idea? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sheikh. Let me go over the first one in terms of why we don't build or use the Warri axis as a point of entry to serve the hinterland. The issue with ports is that they require they require a lot of infrastructure, and in order to maximize the utilization of that infrastructure, you need a really large flow of traffic to justify that investment. So in West Africa, and the thing is, Nigeria is not an island. It's in the West African port ecosystem. In West Africa, we currently have, before the Lekki Deep Sea Port became operational, we had the first modern transshipment center was the port of Lomé. And then the port of Tema in Ghana opened, and then Lekki Deep Sea Port opened. Currently, they're building a new deep sea port in Senegal. But traffic to West Africa, it's not just Nigeria. All those ports, when major shipping lines are sending goods to West Africa, they pick the point where there is infrastructure, and they can return or offload their ship as quickly as possible, offload the cargo as quickly as possible. So, and then when there are only so many places that you can build those. You can't. The Lomé Port has, I think, 1.6 or 1. I can't remember. If it's close to 2 million capacity, about the same capacity with Tema, and Lekki Deep Seaport. Currently, the phase 1 is about 1.6 million TEUs in terms of container traffic, and they can expand it to 2.6 or something like that. The current demand in terms of TEUs from Nigeria is less than what the expanded capacity of Lekki Deep Seaport is. So if you're going to build another port in Nigeria, it's not going to get any traffic because Lekki Deep Seaport can handle all that traffic. The way we have to look at it is we use Lekki Deep Seaport as a transshipment point and then serve other smaller ports along the coast. There is no the fact that the big cargo ships are going to Lekki doesn't mean that the other parts of Nigeria are excluded. Every part of Nigeria benefits from that because we get a more efficient shipping system. In terms of the second question about the linking the Warri Itakpe rail line to the port and using that as an access point, that the Warri to Itakpe line it's a very, I always say that's an orphan line. That is because the amount of population that it serves, it does not justify the investment. So if we are going to spend on building a rail infrastructure, connecting it to a port, that is not where we should be spending the money on, because as we have pointed out here, we have limited resources. We have to put the money where we get the most value out of it. So putting the money where there's value, currently the Warri port can be served by barges. It does not have to be the main entry point because we already have that infrastructure in place. And the best thing that we can do in terms of utilizing our resources is maximizing the utilization or optimizing that piece of infrastructure than spreading and diffusing those resources to other areas. And coordinating with barges to transship cargo from Lekki, that should be a priority. And in terms of the rail, right now I say the Warri to Itakpe rail line should be closed down. Operating that rail line is a waste of money. All the trains should be moved over to Lagos Ibadan, and that line should be shut down. Whatever passengers are being carried out on that line right now can be served by buses. There are currently no cargo being carried on the line, and it's not serving any utility at this point in time. So we have to make sure that we are putting our resources where we get the most value, and not just because we need to put this piece of infrastructure in a place.
Tonami, I agree with you, but you're going to get the flack. I mean, like you use the right word. Itakpe to Warri is an orphan rail. Remember, guys, this was a rail that was built for Jakarta Steel. When Jakarta was being built, there was no Delta State. This was a port that was built so that they could take the iron ore to Itakpe to get it beatified and then take it back to Jakarta. It has nothing to do with moving people. But we wanted a quick political win, so we basically went to a line. That line was built in 1983. That line, Itakpe, was built 1980s by Julius Berger. We went to that same rail line, then we built the stations, and then we launched the train so we could get a political victory. But it's a waste. It doesn't add anything. Like you said, if you put a bus lane there, BRT lane there, you can move people cheaper and faster. But Tonami, let me ask you a question. I know a while back, Julius Berger was making presentations to the traders in Onitsha. And Julius Berger said if you import a container from Europe, land the container in, I think it was Lagos or Warri, they will take it from Warri to Onitsha for you. This is just Berger, and I think it's still up. I'm not sure if people took them up on that, but Berger made that promise that they would take the containers from Warri to Onitsha. What about if we simply put a rail line from Warri to Onitsha? So we can have the barge, i.e. the barge, and also have the railways to go from Warri to Onitsha. Doesn't that solve the issue? So we move to Lekki Deep Seaport. Lekki Deep Seaport moves it by transship to Warri Port. then Warri Port puts on a rail line from Warri to Onitsha, or from a barge from Warri to Onitsha. So you cut off the Lagos-Ibadan Express road. You don't have to put containers on the road anymore. The roads can last longer. Doesn't that really just solve the problem?
So a rail line from Warri to Onitsha.
Yes.
Yeah, so that it falls into the same category. The Onitsha can be served by barges directly from Lekki. So if you're going to put another interface, because transshipment costs both time and money to the cargo. If you're going to put another interface of transshipment, it's going to increase the cost of moving that cargo.
Okay.
So just taking the cargo from Lekki straight to Onitsha that's already the solution in terms of getting the cargo to Onitsha without going via the Lagos Onitsha Expressway. The problem, I don't know how, I haven't looked into the details of how the logistics or how NPA handles transshipment, because I know from past it's not a smooth experience. So if the NPA can work with the shippers on streamlining that process of moving of transshipping goods, that would be a major boost in terms of cargo movement from to and from ports for the entire country in general.
But Warri to Onitsha via barge is viable in your opinion?
Yeah, Warri to Onitsha is viable via barges, and also Lekki to Onitsha as well.
Okay, gotcha. Quick one, Sheikh. You had a quick one on. If I move to the next person, Sheikh, you had a quick one.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring it. So something else. I like what you said, and the fact that Lekki's deep sea port kind of caters to our place in the West African corridor, and also the transshipment line. And I like the fact that you also have the fact that the barges can move directly to Onitsha Seaport at the moment, but we don't know how viable MPA is dealing with that. But now, why I want to bring this home in the sense of our current reality, where we're beginning to see a much regional-centric kind of governance coming up by the day. In that kind of conversation, that more people, like what Kalu has said, in terms of for people to invest, they need a level of confidence in the leadership and all of that. And you're beginning to see more people moving towards a more regional-centric kind of wanting to invest in something that has to benefit their own region. Where within the southern corridors, you have the three regions. And with Lekki's deep sea ports lying in one region, and everybody trying to say, no, we want a piece of the pie. What will be your proposal to solving that kind of problem across the regions to be able to cater with this kind of growth? In terms of
problem. Yeah, thanks for that. My solution to that will be just to tell everybody to get real. That's it. Just get real. Because in terms of the benefit that we get from a large population from the same polity, you cannot get that benefit from fragmenting transport investment based on regional politics. Because if you say, all the ports are going to Lagos, we need our own port in the southeast, and then you go spend that money could have been better spent on building the linkages to evacuate the cargo from Lekki to whatever region that you want to get to. Because yes, I really see all the whatever the regional tension is superficial, and I don't think using that to guide investment, I don't think that's a wise strategy, because you still have to spend that money. And then why not spend the money in a way where you get more value out of it? So, because it's going to building a new port in other regions because of regionalization, it's not we are not going to get much benefit. We're just going to have money parked, and there's no value coming out of it.
Unless, of course, you basically say we're going to a regional government, then of course that governance then supersedes the economics of it. Like the point again is, if you are going to be in Nigeria, then you've got to look at the mass of Nigeria and the markets in Nigeria. So then you have to work. You go to war with the army you have. So essentially, you connect those clusters and you get the most benefit. So, like you said, the problem in Lagos Port is Apapa. To get out of Apapa Port, out of Apapa is nearly a nightmare. I think if we can build a rail line from the port of Apapa itself and take it somewhere near or more just out of Lagos, and then from there it can then be shipped via rail to that would just solve all this. That to me is the easiest thing. The rail line, any port I see in America has a rail line. Any port I see. I've never seen a port without the rail line here. But if we had a rail line in Apapa that would take these goods out, we won't be talking about transshipping a container to Onitsha on the Atlantic. But it is what it is. So let's get a few guys in here. Daniel, go ahead, please, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Aja, you took the last words from my mouth, but let me cite some example and then ask a few questions. My first question is around the concessionary project, the head DMI project that the last 8 years the federal government worked on, that had a couple of highways handed over to some private guys and strong consortiums. You know, what's happening with that? Where are we on that? Why are we not seeing results? You mentioned MTN working on Enugu Onitsha. I applied that road almost every other week, and it's still not 20% completed. You know, what's happening with that? Then I'm going to ask a question. What do you think is the viability of doing an inland port in a city, maybe somewhere in Aba, such that there's a 12-kilometer railway that comes from Port Harcourt Port into Aba Axis, such that it can actually take, the Port Harcourt Enugu railway, at some interchange goes to the north. So that if someone is bringing something to places like Onitsha, Nnewi, and Aba also because of exports to, so that it's, I know that Enyimba Economic City had full destination, full origin inland port license, so that if we want to export to the West African coast, the Central African coast, we can actually put it on the rail, the 12 kilometers rail to Port Harcourt, and it goes out. I know the value of the Lekki deep sea port, but decentralizing our economy, I'm thinking in terms of economic decentralization, but I know there might be stronger arguments around that. But, because if I want to export and I need to put it on the road to go to Lagos first before I export, it's discouraging. And Nigeria is not really getting a lot out of our exports because there is no structured export system. Some people now use the back doors to export. I know the quantity of shoe that leaves Aba, to Cameroon and to some West African states, but those guys go through dark routes, and not strong part of that money goes to government. Okay, so what's happening with our concession, and how can this our concession solve this road problem as we talked about it with the routes you discussed, and what can inland ports do for us, and then use railway? Because I see the proposition Enyimba made was they were going to have a railway line that moves anything that is destination Enyimba that drops in Port Harcourt, railway to their inland port, and then everything happens at that point. Okay. If we have clusters of that across regions,
Daniel, I think the point
solve our problem.
I think the point to me. So you're basically asking critically why. So just a simple question, so Tanami can basically. I get the background. Just if you could do that simple question. He was off, so just make sure he heard you. We just added him back. So what was the simple question for him? Now that he's back. That Tanami was off. First, go ahead. Yeah.
First, what's happening with our concessions? Mm-hmm. All the concession HDMI concession that happened for 13 routes, I guess.
Yep.
Where are we on that, and what's happening, and how can that improve the major road infrastructure?
Okay.
And then having inland ports as against having so multiple deep sea ports, having inland ports where, if something is full destination, a particular inland port, it just gets to the water and then by road, rail.
Okay. So Tonami, I think I'm not sure. Two questions. What's happening to the tax? I think it's the tax credit concessions where you build the infrastructure and the government gives you back the money via tax credits. Number one. Number two, he's basically saying, why can't we have more inland ports, right? We have deep sea ports. I'm not sure if he's saying they should cancel themselves out, but it's asking really what's the viability of having more inland ports. There's Lokoja, there's Onitsha in regards to even having a deep sea port in Lekki and Don in Calabar. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So for those questions regarding the concessions, I haven't followed those in detail. So I don't know what's going on with those concessions or how they're being executed. But in terms of the viability of river ports, those are actually useful. We don't have to look at it as one or the other. Like we need especially for like industrial output, when you have chemicals, different other industrial activity that need water access for efficient movement of their cargo. For example, you have the flour mills are always cited at the ports. Dangote Flour at Apapa and BUA at Port Harcourt, because they can get their shipment of flour directly at the port, and those don't have to go via trucks. Then they process it into whatever cereal or noodles or whatever part of those products. And so those are necessary. But in terms of and also even in terms of container traffic, the thing with the deep sea port and linking those linking the deep sea port to different regions is that's just the way modern shippers ship. If you have cargo destined for Aba, it's not going to go directly from Guangzhou to Aba. It's going to go from Guangzhou to a major transshipment center. And then usually, and then it will be transshipped to Aba. So for example, if we have cargo destined for Onitsha, that cargo will go from wherever it's coming from, Shanghai, Guangzhou to Lekki, and then transshipped. The cargo will be broken down because for shippers, they need to ship, they're more efficient when they ship a lot of cargo at once. So there's no direct shipment that you order, direct shipment to every single port. The port system in the world currently operates in a hub and spoke system. So whatever cargo you're going to get in another part of the country, if that place is not a high demand center, for right now in Nigeria, Lagos is the demand center. And that's regardless if you take out all the cargo that is going everywhere else. Because all the manufacturing in the country is happening in Lagos. That is the demand center. So all the cargo is going to go there. So what we have to do is to make use of that node as an entry point. Because if you create another node, there's no shipper that's going to send a ship directly to those places. So it doesn't really. The idea of decentralization, it sounds good it sounds good when you think about it, but in practice, most ports around the world operate in a hub and spoke. If it is a major port, then it's going to be a transshipment center. If it is a minor demand center, then it's going to get its cargo that's transshipped from a nearby port. And that's just the way the shipping system is. And we just have to build our infrastructure to make use of that the best way we can.
Yeah, and let me just add this, right? So, the private sector looks at P&L, profit and loss, revenues. If you are the governor of a state in the south, southeast, and you desire a port, my advice to you is to build one yourself and then use that as a template to show to the private sector that it works. Then the private sector will follow your lead. So to answer your question directly, Dan, should we have an inland port? Yes, nobody has stopped you. Delta, Anambra, they can build an inland port. There's a federal inland port in Onitsha right now. Nothing stops Anambra state government from building a container port, very, very modern. Only containers, lots of computers, they can be controlled 24/7. They can partner. The governor is very, very close to the president to discuss with him. So barges can come all the way to a new port in Anambra. They can offload and then it can happen. It will be a good vote winner for you, right? So if you do that, the private sector will watch you. If it makes money, they would invest in it. Because in the end, no matter how good the idea is, money has got to build the idea. I'll give you a good example. There was no airport in the whole of the southeast apart from Enugu. Imo State, back then it was just Anambra and Imo State. So Imo State, that's the southeast, decided to build a new airport in Imo State. And they didn't wait for the federal government. They got together, they did GoFundMe, they did crowdfunding, and they built an airport in Imo. Now the federal government has taken over the airport, it's expanded, it's now more modern, but the money followed the business. If you don't show the private sector that there's business, there's easy to say there's business in Onitsha, but how many containers will actually move if you invest all that capital in dollar terms to build a port? So if the Julius Berger MD had said, hey, Onitsha, you can do transshipment. If Onitsha had taken that guy up on his offer, I'm not sure why they did not. And we are seeing 100 containers every month. Oh, wow. Somebody's going to go and put a port on Onitsha because the business case is now being made. So my advice is, in the end, start it even if it's small and show the private sector this is viable. And once they see it's viable, the business will follow. If you wait for the government, it's not going to happen. That's my way. Just my point of saying it. We've had that port in Onitsha for a long while. I haven't seen it boom. I know there's a company that moves tiles from Onitsha to Niger State, but I'm not seeing lots of containers there. And what is hard in getting a barge and then taking the 2 or 3 containers from Lagos there is not cheaper, but it hasn't boomed. And if it's not booming, that's a big red flag to an investor to say, why isn't this port making it? If it's not making it, why should I invest more in it? So if you know why it's not making it, let me know. Then we can sort of understand next steps. So let me get Alien. Alien X is here. Thanks for waiting, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kalu. Please, I would want to push back on some things that you have said. I don't know if it's okay.
Please go ahead.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I heard. Thanks for also enlightening us and telling us, that the Itape to Warri rail line was done because of the Ajaokuta steel and everything. But I noticed you guys are of the opinion that we should not, that it's not really viable, and you do not think that it's something we should keep on running. Well, for me, I've used that line, and I even used it recently, and I can tell you that there are a lot of people that use that rail, the only issue I think that we are having there is something that I feel you guys need to, I really want to also ask questions on, is maintenance. I don't know if any of you have gone through that rail line and the coaches over there. The inner coaches, a lot of everything that is there has been bastardized. Some of them are, I don't know, broken, not properly maintained. The AC, some coaches' ACs are not working. Some of the facilities not working. I remember using it recently, and some of the rail lines, when you are passing through some of the places there, you will see they are reducing the speed, and they are saying that they are reducing the speed because of vandalization and so on and so forth. I even remember one time after boarding it, it took us over an hour before the train started moving because they said the train was having some issues and they had to fix it quickly and so on and so forth. But I can tell you that every time I've passed through that place, for passengers using it, I think there is a lot of volume. There are a lot of people going through it and everything. Number two is that I did a quick search, and you can fact check me, please. China doesn't really make gains, and I know I'm not supposed to be quoting China, but because China is more advanced than us, but check their rail lines. Most of the times, almost every year, I think it was just recently, they started making gains on their rail lines. They have been making losses, but because they know that these are very, very important facilities and infrastructure for the people, they have been investing. So I just wanted to say that. Now, my question to Tonami is very simple. What are the possibilities of the private sector investing in all of these things? Because I've been in one or two meetings where people like the transport systems, like those buses, AP Sinachi, ABC, and some other JIT, what do you call that other bus line again? I've been trying to see how they can talk to the government to invest in it, to also try and see how they can own coaches and run some of these things there. What are the feasibilities on some of these private investors going into it? Do you think it would be wise for private investors actually running the rails instead of NRC or Nigerian Railway Commission or something running it and other things? And two, what can we do to, improve the maintenance culture of the existing rail lines that we have currently? I yield the mic for now. I still have more, but I'll yield the mic for now. Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
Okay. Yeah, I can go. Yeah. Thanks, Alien X. So for the first one regarding the wait, I lost my chain.
He basically said he talked about Warri to Itakpe. He's sort of pushing back on the fact that, listen, we are saying it's not really commercial. So he's stating his case of China is building it for the future. They're not looking at today's profits, but they're looking at it tomorrow and all that. That's for Warri Itakpe. So he's saying, why can't we just invest in upgrading it so that it becomes more viable? That's his first issue on it, Warri Itakpe. Then, of course, the second one is talking about the private sector. Can they come in and run this thing so it's better productivity? I think those are his two questions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. So for the Warri Itakpe route, in regards to China funding their infrastructure projects, a lot of those projects are heavily planned and they are distributed based on resources. Yes, they have fringe projects that are done for political reasons, but majority of the rail projects in China are funded, and also the port projects are funded based on the amount of demand for those places. Yes, they also project demand, but those projections are based on the existing reality. Now, in Nigeria, if we want to say Warri Itakpe, if we want to keep spending money, the amount of money, the Nigeria, we don't have that much money to spend on infrastructure. For something like a rail line, it needs to have a ton of traffic on it to get the most utility out of it. The current population along the Warri-Itakpe corridor, yes, you might go to a train station and the train is full, but that doesn't matter. What matters is how many riders that train serves annually. If you might have full trains, but then if you have train service once a day or twice in a day, it doesn't amount to much. So the trains might be full, but that doesn't mean that there is a lot of ridership on that particular corridor. And that is one. So right now, the population distribution on that corridor is so small. The amount of investment it's going to take to get that ridership up to a level where it is justifiable is going to be immense. And in a country like Nigeria, instead of, we could spend that money, yes, and say it's for the future, but then there's the opportunity cost. Because we've spent that money on this corridor, we've neglected other corridors that have more potential in terms of ridership. So that is why I'm always advocating for removing our focus on the Warri-Itakpe Railway as a passenger railway, as a freight railway, because right now, in terms of the network, the Nigerian network system, it does not add any value that is reasonable to the network. So that's that for the Warri-Itakpe. In terms of private investments coming into infrastructure projects, it like for the buses, it makes sense. It is viable because it's more distributed. But for rail, it is not viable because it's if we say we want to bring private investors to run and operate rail, they're going to run it to the ground. That's the same process has been repeated everywhere across the world, where you bring in private investors, you privatize the railways, and then they run it into the ground. Because it's just the incentives within the nature of rail is that you're not able to capture all the benefits. So if you're not able to capture all the benefits, then it's not going to be a profitable venture for a private investor. Yes, the Chinese government, when they build rails, they have operational losses. The government can stomach those losses because the government can recoup the benefits in other aspects of the economy. A private investor will not be able to recoup that. A private investor cannot say, oh, we want to collect money from taxes from the traders and everybody else and all the other economic activity. A private investor can't do that. They can only get money from that particular traffic on that particular rail line. So for rail, we should stay away from the idea of private investors running rail because it's just going to make things worse. For buses, we've been doing it that way for a while. The problem we've had with buses is fragmentation of bus traffic, where we have where we moved from using coach buses to now we're using these 11-seater buses where people are cramped inside. And so because I remember when I was traveling back in the 90s, early 2000, we go to Kennedy Lichuku and Chisco and all those guys. We're using coach buses to travel across the country. And now you want to travel, you have to get into an 11-seater bus where you're cramped in with luggage and you don't have... So that's the problem we have in terms of bus transportation. We have to find a way to consolidate the industry. because a lot of them went to that route because they could not fill. You have so many providers, and they couldn't fill their coach buses. So they decided, let's go to a smaller bus so that we can fill it up and then move. But in operating intercity buses, you have to operate on a schedule. So you operate on a schedule, whether the bus is full or empty, that bus has to move. And until we have to get to that point where that is how we operate buses, we have to find a way to consolidate the services, and also spreading out and also consolidating like the bus terminals. So we have dedicated bus terminals, and we have distributed terminals in different parts of the city for different operators. So those are the things that the government can do. And I know some governments are already doing that, but the execution leaves a lot of room for improvement. So that's something that we can do in terms of the for the bus services, and then the private operators can run the buses. But in running the buses, they don't have to run it on a full bus. Don't move until the bus is full. Strategy, which for most of the time, that's how the buses have been operating. Gotcha. It has to be on a schedule.
Which means they lose money.
Yeah. So, but you recover the money over. When you calculate how you run the route, people make their decisions based on that schedule. If you have a schedule, somebody trusts that, okay, I am going to depart at this particular time when I get to this particular bus, people will make their plans based on that. And you make your plan, you make your, your operations based on that. If you wait on a fill and go strategy, then that's not a service that is.
Yeah, I got you. I hear what you're saying, but most of these guys are mom and pop bus or companies, right? If you go to ABC, they operate at a certain fixed time, but Nigeria doesn't have this developed in like transportation companies. Ekene Chukwu goes on fixed times. I remember back then it was 6 a.m., 6:15, 6:30. They move, but once you go to the smaller parks, the first buses go on time. The other buses are going to be when they are filled. But I want to just bring you back to, I know we didn't really answer the question about the infrastructure of what MTN is doing with the tax credits. I'm going to have to take a look at it because essentially MTN builds, then MTN takes that money and files taxes. I don't know where the bottleneck is from. If you're saying you are plowing on it and it's still not changed, I'm going to have to do some research and see where really the problem is. Why is it that MTN has not fixed that road? It was not a long time ago, since 2022, when Buhari was in charge. That's when we passed that tax credit. So let me do some research and come back to you on what's happening with the tax credits. I know NNPC did almost $500 million, according to them, to build roads. And the first one they did was the Apapa to Ojota Express Road. They fixed the Apapa to Ojota Express Road. Then they said they did an extra $500 million. But it's NNPC. We have to really check their numbers and all that. And again, just like Chuks has said, just to answer the question that the gentleman asked, Daniel, I believe, was not Daniel, in effect, in economics, that's what we call choice, because resources are scarce. So China has 3 trillion. They can afford to build everything on a loss basis. They have 3 trillion in reserves. Nigeria has 20 or 30 billion. So we can't build because of choice. We have to maximize. So what Tolani is saying, if we know Itakme to Warri, I just shared a new chart now. If you look at the new chart we shared, you see that I put the red lines across the narrow gauge roads. And if you look at the narrow gauge railways, we have standard gauge Itakme to Warri. We have standard gauge Abuja to Kaduna. Then we have standard gauge Lagos to Ibadan. If you look at what we've done in Nigeria, look at the entire rail in Nigeria is narrow gauge. The entire rail is narrow gauge. What we've now done is we've taken bits of standard gauge and put it on that infrastructure. So it really can't be integrated. You can't go from Kaduna to Abuja and go anywhere else by rail, because the rails after Abuja is narrow gauge. There's only standard gauge from Abuja to Kaduna, then it stops. Same with Lagos. You can only go from Lagos to Ibadan on standard gauge. After then, it's narrow gauge. So the train just goes to Ibadan and it stops there. Itakpe is even worse. It's not connected to anything. So the point is, why build a railway not connected to anything? Just put a BRT service there. It's not, you want to move, right? Do a bus service there, because it's not connected to any rail. It's just there in the middle of nowhere from Itakpe to Warri. You can argue and say, okay, well, can we build from Warri to the port? That's an argument to have. Can we build from Itakpe to Abuja? That's another argument to have. But as it stands today, it's not connected to anything. So you might as well just take it offline, replace it with a bus service, brand new buses or brand new trucks for cargo. And then, like he said, move that rail line to where you have the highest need. So if you get more rail carriages there, the cost in that corridor will fall. And then you just forget about the Itakpe thing for now, because you have to have a choice in economics. There's scale of preference. You can't do all. You have to do which one is going to give you the maximum. That's what I would say to that. So I don't know if we answered your question. Let's get Chuka. Chuka, I think
okay, sir. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. My question again goes, what is the possibilities of these mostly southern governors, since we know, because we are working on the issue is economic development. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Yes, the point is economic development. What is the most viable to boost the economy? And we have analyzed and said it's the east-west route. So why can't these governors with their short kilometer going through Lagos to Ondo, Edo to Delta to Anambra to Imo, and we have River States, because that is the east-west road connecting Lagos via Onitsha and Port Harcourt. For this rail. Then also maybe we can have a highway line from there. You understand? So I want to know, is there any possibilities of these governors coming together?
I get your question. Yes. Tonami will speak, but let me just give you my own take. When we started up, I said the issue in Nigeria is this 4-year and 8-year time limit. If you start today, in the past, railways could only be built by the federal government of Nigeria, not the states, only the federal government. Now, states can build railways, but you can't build a railway, get it operational, I would even say in 4 years. It's very, very hard. Let's say you have the funding today. It's difficult to build that whole railway line, get it funded and operational in 4 years. You see where I'm coming from? So any governor you go to today and you tell the governor, let's build a rail line from Onitsha to Aba and continue to Nnewi. That's a wonderful project, because you are connecting 3 clusters. So Onitsha, Aba, Owerri, and then you connect it back to the rail line in Port Harcourt. So it's connected to the federal line, but it's serving Nnewi, Aba, Onitsha. Beautiful idea. But if you start today, what's the first thing you're going to raise capital? You raise capital, you go to ICRC, Infrastructure Regulatory Commission, to get approval. Let's say you do all this in 1 year. You now mobilize the contractors to site. They will take at least 6 months to bring all their stuff to site, hire people, do survey, do mapping. Let's say under 6 years, under 6 months. Then at least under 1 year, you start to clear the road. 2 years has gone. You're now in the 3rd year. Politics has started. Let's say you are insulated from politics. You can't build a rail line in 2 years. So you are not going to go for your second term. In your second term, fine, you start to build. Can you complete it in 5 years or in 4 years? Maybe you complete Aba to Nnewi, but can you do all 3 and connect it? No. So the problem is that it's no longer a governor. It cannot be a governor chasing it. It's got to be a region chasing it for the entire region, and the governor's job is just to contribute money. So you have, for instance,
that's what I said. But governors coming together.
That's where I'm going to. So
okay.
So if you, for instance, have the SADC, you have the Northeast Development Commission, you have all the development commission all over the place. If they simply say every quarter or every month we're going to transfer funds from our FARC to this fund, and you create an SPV, This SPV is the seed funding. So the government puts seed funding, but the government can also sell equity in this line to the diaspora, Nigerians in diaspora, and they own the railway line because that's an asset. You then see you're going to then build this railway over 15, 20 years, and you would operate it even at the loss. But it's for the southeast or for the south or whatever. The point is, you can't, if you take away the who gets the credit, this is very, very easy to build. It doesn't cost as much as you think. It doesn't cost that much, but the governors that have the seed funding are not going to deploy that seed funding into a project that they will not be personally lauded for. That's my own personal view. I could be wrong if you see a governor start to build today, but look at the Enugu State Governor's statement. He wants to build a railway, he himself, from Enugu to One. Notice he didn't say, I'm going to talk to my other brothers in the southeast and we're going to come together. No, he wants to build. It's a fantastic idea. But if everyone was doing it, the cost will fall and it's more viable. Enugu is not bordering Cross River. So it has to pass through a state, right? So that state is going to pass through. Will they give him approval? Will they fund? Are they part of this project? So you see, this is the thing. You can't build railway or even roads on a silo micro basis. That's why I brought Tolani in here today. You've got to have a plan. This road we're building, if you want to build a road inside Enugu State, it will be more expensive than if you talk to Enugu, Imo, Abia, Ebonyi, and say, let's build a 5-state superhighway. If you bring in Julius Berger, and you tell Julius Berger, every month we're going to take 10% of our FAC without stoppage. We're going to do an irrevocable standing order payment. It will go from our FAC to a bank. That bank account will pay you. We want you to build us a 10-lane expressway connecting all the 5 eastern states with the railway line. And this funding will continue for the next 25 years. If Berger has such an arrangement, they'll start to build it because they know that even if the governor goes away, they will get their money. It will be cheaper than one state trying to build that same infrastructure. So it's back to this thing we don't talk about, politics, and we don't plan long term. China can build this thing because it's China. America, they tried to build a railway in California, Tulani, and they haven't done it. But some states have. So it's Nigeria is a different animal, but I just think that everybody wants to succeed. Everybody wants to succeed. If you go to the other states and you say, this will make your VAT in 20 years to go up, but you won't spend that much money today, I think you'll get a lot of buy-in. But you have to have a leader. Someone has to go and say, and hold this in and sell it. We have too many. I'm going to get into trouble now, but let me just say it. What you call the Southeast and what you call the Southwest today were run by one person. Awolowo ran the Southwest. He alone. Okpara ran the Southeast. So if Michael Okpara says he wanted to build a railway, it's like how the Abia State government wants to build a railway from Omar here to Aba. It's within his state. But now we've fragmented this thing down to 5 states, 6 states. If you say today you want to build a railway in the Southwest, you will see what will happen. Go and say it. One governor will say, it's APC or it's PDP, or it must pass through my state capital or it might pass through here, then you get issues. So this fragmentation, states versus regions, is coming back to bite us. In America, they have the valley-wide, the Tennessee River Valley railway cluster. But here, this state thing, you have some states are too small to be states, but they control a lot of land mass, which is pivotal to infrastructure. I hope you know what I'm saying. Tell me if you can help. But that's just my take, yeah. You have to have buy-in, a strong leader. If Awolowo today woke up and said, we're going to build railway in the Southwest, he would do it. If Okpara woke up today and said, I'm going to build it, because he can go to all those 5 states and say, this is what we want to do. But look at your political governance today. Which governor do you think can coalesce 5 different governors and say, hey, let's take 10% of our FARC and deploy a railway? Which one do you think, do you have a name? Which one do you think can do it? They're all competing in a way. So that's Chuka, that is a problem. I won't lie to you, but Yeah, Modestus, you had something to say?
Yes, I just wanted to offer 2 or 3 points on this issue. The first one is the southeastern states. They are very, very easy to be connected through a tram system. A tram line doesn't cost as much as a train line, and it's equally the same purpose. It can serve the same purpose and very, very lower cost.
What's tram? I think those trams you're seeing like in Germany, those tram things.
In Germany, Europe does more.
What will they carry? What will they carry?
Yeah, they carry a lot. In fact, it's almost the same thing with the train. But the only good thing there is they use electric. You just connect it to the substation and then it powers it easily.
Electric.
It moves on. It uses electric. So because we have so many, if you go to the Eastern Corridor there, we have Afam power station. There are quite a few power stations around. All you need to do is just to connect it there. And the trams can just connect the whole Eastern states. Very, very easy, very, very cheap to run. Very nice network. And in fact, it's not even going to take too much to do. So that is one side of it. The other thing I'm also worried about is Nigerian population projections. We are projected to get to 34 to 500 million in the next 20 years. But it's like we are not planning for that. And it's one of the things that I struggle with all along. Each time I look at the state budget in the Southeast, the capital budget is always road. Since I was born, it has always been road. And I tend to wonder if the roads has increased, if the land has increased. Because it's like every year, the governors do the budget for the same road. That same road, it hasn't increased in size, but it has always taken 50 to 60% of the budget on a yearly basis. And I think I have looked into it to look at the corporates about it. It's like when a governor says, I'm commissioning a 4-kilometer road, he gets more accolade than when he does any other thing. So what they do is, rather than saying, because in Europe here, I'll be very, very frank with you, those who maintain the roads here are not even educated. They didn't even go to university. They build the road, but those people maintain, in fact, they drive every day looking for where there is a small thing, and they patch it up. Roadworks is almost on a daily basis to maintain those existing roads that has already been built. So one of the problems we have is not even constructing new ones, it's maintaining existing ones. You can pick a road in Nigeria and find out that it's been awarded and awarded and awarded and awarded. It's like a conduit pipe where governors use it to rake money. And it really, really annoys me too much because we have sort of put governance and add road building on top of it as a metric to measure the level of governance and what people are doing. And because we have done that, it's like we have sucked out the life of every other infrastructure development. We're not talking about industrialization. We're not talking about building infrastructures that serve as employment, having employment hubs, having manufacturing hubs. I myself feel that a governor should even put more money in manufacturing and then let the companies themselves build the access road that goes to their places. Because that's how most of the towns in Europe are built. They build industrial area and then the access road will follow through CSA. Because that is one other thing I also want to talk about. And asking the local authorities to maintain their roads. Like you did mention Mbakwe building Imo State Airport. I paid. My dad mentioned that I paid. Every child paid their money who went to primary school in them days. Primary, secondary, university, we all paid. Because we took ownership. It was sold to us as this thing belongs to us. And because it was sold to us, we are so passionate to pay for it. But this time around, it's like the governors have taken it, okay, I can only be measured by the road that we open up the next day because of our topography. A governor built one road in Imo State and it just opened immediately the rain season came in. It opened everywhere. And he was saying, what? Did they pour acid on the road? That was his naivety. He said, why is this road? I commissioned it, I drove past it, and now it's open. They didn't know that the topography of the area means that some of the hilly stones that are underground, as soon as the rain goes in, it will come up. But if he has known that, he probably would have been able to say, look, I need to maintain these roads. And the thing there that really, really struck me most of the times is we don't really look at it to say, how do we develop our mechanical engineers and civil engineers? Why do we still award road projects to external contractors from abroad? What are they doing? In Europe, you can even go to Caterpillar website and buy the entire machinery to scrap the old one, pour the new one, and do it rinse and repeat 2 or 3 times in a year. But it's a very big revenue draining for these local authorities and governors. They do that a lot, and it annoys me to hell. Then you talked about the waterways. Europe is connected by canals. They build these canals to use it to move their heavy goods. They build it at that time of the height of the Industrial Revolution, and it's still serving them. We have waterways all across the country. It's something that we really need to start thinking of. How do we develop that? It's a very easy thing, but it's like our people don't really have that vision to say, how do I do this? How do I connect these networks for economic development? How do I move goods from area to Cameroon? How do I do that at a scale? And then once you're able to do that, you can bring like minds together to say, look, people like Tolani that is here, say, look, develop a policy for me that I can use and implement, and then have that vision from inception to implementation, and then you can begin to see the economies of scale that comes from that. But we are not doing it. It's like everything about us is short term. People are just eager to please, even though it doesn't really make sense. It will not even last. The next election, it might not even last. So these are some of the things I wanted to talk about. But I really feel that in the Southeast, we need to look at the tram system. Each of these states are not more than 45 kilometers, 45 miles apart. From Port Harcourt to Owerri, it's only 45 minutes on the bus. On a tram, driving at 70 miles an hour, it can even get there in 20 minutes. Because trams can do a top speed of 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. And these are some of the things that these people, they come to Europe, they jump on these trams. But when they go by, they don't really ask, why is this thing so efficient? How can I do that? It's like the bigger things, people are just hooked up on the bigger, we want a seaport, we want a rail line. But what are the alternatives?
I honestly think that we need to connect intra first before we talk about the seaport. I think the roads and the rails connecting Nigeria, all the state capitals, to me, serves a bigger purpose than even the seaport, because there's a lot of commerce that is lost. A lot of commerce is lost because we don't have roads. We have mango season. If you go to Benue State today, there are mangoes on the floor rotting away. If you go on tomato season to Kano, tomatoes rotting away, onions rotting away. But there are no roads to take these tomatoes, mangoes, and from the north to the south where the markets are. Look at PMS. We are paying.
You're looking at it from the transportation side of it. What I'm looking at is what stops Benue from investing in technology to store the excess mangoes.
That is a point. No, but that is a point. But even when you store it, you still have to move it. You still have to move it hub and spoke.
If you store it at scale, you can now begin to have people who actually know what to do in terms of distribution.
Oh, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying, because we are talking more of transportation, the issue is still that you need to transport food from where it's grown to where it's consumed. It's just that the topic today is, I'm not against storage. No. You're completely correct. The value chain needs that investment, right? But still, the rural areas, I started off the topic with DFRI. DFRI at the very, very base level is talking about building infrastructure at the rural villages. Going to the villages where there's cassava, where there's sorghum and millet, and building those, even if it's a road that can take a little truck, from that village to the bigger town, then to the bigger town, obviously to the cities. And that's the whole way, that's how you develop, really. And the infrastructure has got to be connected. This is again the point,
Just to circle back on that thing you said, my grandfather used to work for Ministry of Works. At the time, when I was very, very young, we used to go to the local authority. Every local government in the East then used to have a Ministry of Works. And how you know that it's Ministry of Works is that you see a heap of quota, you see a heap of asphalt, and then you see a lot of shovels and you see a lot of that. In the local authority, in the local government headquarters. And every morning they go out and patch the roads within their local authority. That keeps every road in top shape. Because the people in that ministry, in that local authority have to go to work on a daily basis. But when we started this issue of contracts, that's when they begin to disband all this stuff. And yet Europe that we learned from still maintain that. Look, it is a local authority in England that build the roads within their local authority. It is them that maintain even the trunk A, trunk B, and even the access roads and all the roads that link to the major highway.
I mean, the way I know it is summer is that I see road maintenance. That's how I know it's summer. Once it is summer, you see road maintenance all over the place. Yeah.
We need to bring back that so that the governors should stop thinking about this road thing, awarding it in billions and billions. And then at the end of the day, it still passes through those local authorities that could have been better positioned. At least we are talking about creating of jobs. We don't have jobs. We don't have people who are even trained in the universities to do work in all these industry, in all these sectors of the economy that we're talking about. You know, when you bring Julius Berger, they put two machines there on the road, and then they employ only 10 people, and it's a 40 billion naira contract. I don't even see the advantage for the people who are there in terms of revenue, in terms of employment. If you put a Julius Berger and they use 60 billion to build a road and they employ only 10 people, what does that even tell us? And this is, I think, some of the things I feel that those who are in the, I see them when I go to Nigeria, and it really, really scares me. Because that is not how it is done all over here.
All right, Melissa, I got you. I mean, we've sort of talked a lot. Do you have any comments on the exchange? I mean, he's really going down to the maintenance side of it. Is this something that we should talk about? Again, if you had 1.3 trillion and you had infrastructure broken down, I personally would have focused on fixing the existing roads, at least getting them motorable. You've talked about the Lokoja cluster that is blocked, the Onitsha cluster is blocked out there. Then going to build a brand new, a 1.3 trillion coastal road that's not going to be built in the next 10 years. So what's your take on just the conversation so far? Not sure if you can still hear me, Tonami.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute.
Sorry about it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Modestus, for sharing that information. In terms of maintenance, it is a critical part. Unfortunately, it is not glitzy or glamorous or lucrative for governors, so it doesn't get the attention that it needs. So governors always focus on what new project they're going to bring in. If we building roads or any transport infrastructure is not just building the infrastructure. You have to maintain that infrastructure, and that's one thing why, for example, like the states that have brought out their rail master plans, because rail is something that needs a lot of operational aptitude to be able to get the best out of it. And if you are not able to operate it, then it's a total waste of resources. So all those states that are talking about rail master plan this, rail master plan that, they'll be better served using that money to fix the roads, like you say, fix the existing roads. We have lots of very, very poor roads that are in poor conditions. Fix the existing roads to allow people to move more efficiently within the state. So they'll get more value out of that. There was a research done on the Chinese road infrastructure, and the conclusion of the finding was that the rural roads where they had the economic value that was four times those of the major expressways. So there's a lot of value that is locked in a lot of these roads that are connecting agriculture from agricultural source to points of consumption or just linking those rural areas so that they can get their products to the main roads. That's a source of that would be a major value addition for the states. In regards to the part about trams are for urban movement. So in European cities that operate trams, they only serve.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They
only serve the urban area because the trams, they have the rails that are used for trams. They are different from the rails that are used for mainline rail, because they have to. They're designed so that people don't trip on it. So it has a lower weight carrying capacity. So, and so that they can place it, because they usually place them in the streets, because they have people walking across the streets, cars crossing across the street. So in terms of using those, I would say trams are not really suitable for Nigerian cities, because for the trams as a main urban transit system, they only serve very small cities. Once your city gets larger than 1 million or more people, it's best to just build metro lines to serve, because the metro lines have higher carrying capacity than trams. And for intercity travel for passengers, that's where the whole point of this intercity rail, it's different from a tram line. So that's like a mainline heavy rail for intercity traffic. For that, unless if it's for the Southeast, unless all the states come together and build the entire route from Port Harcourt to Onitsha to Enugu, then it's not useful. If you only build sections of it, like for example, they say Imo builds only the section within Imo, then it's useless.
Exactly, yeah.
So until you build the entire thing, then there's no point in doing that. So for the intercity rail, it's either the region comes together and builds it at once, or the federal government does it like the federal government has been doing for the other railways, and the federal government takes the initiative to do it from the federal level. Otherwise, it's just for the states. The states should not be having rail as something that is part of their infrastructure plan. It should be roads. They should be focused on roads and linking those roads up, fixing the existing roads. And in terms of urban movement, they should be planning metro systems. Not every state, not every city needs one. Right now, the only cities that need a metro in the Southeast are Port Harcourt, Onitsha, and maybe Aba. And they should be planning for those. And they could start by running bus services, and then they should be planning for those routes and try to get funding for the major corridors and then you build those major corridors, and you feed it with buses, and that's how you serve your urban space. A lot of Nigerian cities are way too big to be served by trams at this point.
Yeah,
you might.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt you. I just want to confirm why you think the state can do rail. You said focus on roads. Is it cost, or if the state has got the money? Lagos State has a lot of money. Akwa Ibom has a lot of money. Delta has a lot of money. Why can't those states do rail? Even if Delta says they're going to do Asaba to whatever, they can fund it. Why can't they do rail?
Yeah, the thing with rail is only. It's only useful for long distances, and most of the states in Nigeria, they're relatively small.
Oh, I see where you're going. Okay.
So if your state is not crossing many state lines, if the rail line is not crossing many state lines, then it's not going to be that much valuable.
Makes sense. I get it now.
So rather than tying up that money on that short rail line, it's best to put that money into roads that can actually benefit the people at immediately. If the only time that money should go to rail is if there is a consortium, like all the states want to build in a region, let's say the Southwest, all the Southwest states, they agree, they put the funding in, and then they build the entire route. If each state is building their own rail just for the state, yeah, it's not going to be very useful.
Yeah, makes sense. I see where you're going to with that. Some guys still want to speak. Afribol, real quick, what's in your mind?
Hi. So just to build up what you just mentioned, with the corridors between the states, and you talked about how private players might not be the best option to participate in that transport link. Well, I wanted to just maybe run through this scenario where you have in some places in Europe where certain routes are given to exclusively to some players to run bus transportation. I guess they do there, and it seems to be profitable. Are there similar opportunities on bus routes or certain corridors where it will be profitable for a private player to have exclusive rights to run a bus network on that corridor, or is that a bit more advanced than where the country is?
So are you saying like give a route to just one guy to run?
Yeah, so in some places they give some companies run one route, the bus route. They have exclusive rights to run a bus network on one route or one corridor, and they move mostly between a very dense populated area, and it's profitable. Their margins are not huge, but it's profitable enough for a private player to take that route. So I'm asking if TAIR sees similar opportunities in Nigeria, with highly dense routes, if the government does build out the corridor, and maybe with the existing infrastructure now, are there any opportunity? Is there a similar opportunity on the ground now?
Yeah. Is this for
the buses?
For the buses? Yeah. Is this for urban transport or intercity?
And let's say both. Intercity.
Okay.
Let's say both. Are there any? Would you believe there will be a similar opportunity where an exclusive route to a private player exists, or that structure would work?
Yeah, I don't like anything private though. But go ahead.
Yeah. So that there are opportunities for that, but the point of failure in that structure is how well the public body manages that agreement. So if the public body has they can issue one corridor for a private transport company to run that particular corridor. But if the agreement is not handled properly, then it's going to generate a lot of issues. Because For example, if the private operator does not have enough funds or runs out of funds to operate the route, what should happen to that route? Should nobody is going to travel that route again because the private partner doesn't have the money to run it? And then what happens in those situations? So they're all, it's doable, but I will not trust the current situation of the Nigerian public bodies to be able to execute that, right? It's going to, the way we are right now is going to set us up for big time disaster.
And again, it has to just be a symbiotic relationship. I know ABC Motors came up with a bus that had air conditioning. You could have in-flight entertainment and meals, but they were on Nigerian roads. I mean, this company was listed. It's a PLC. You could buy into that transport sector. The point I'm making, it was a quote-unquote first-class company, but on Nigerian roads. Eventually, the roads ruined the buses. The AC stopped working. And when you go to the park, it's, it two have to go together. If those roads were fantastic, you would have had to talk about a Greyhound today. That you have this company ABC doing Lagos to Maiduguri with air conditioned buses, but the roads all went bad. The last time I went on a night trip, oh my good Jesus! This was decades ago. Literally people are building the roads at night. Villagers, you pay them money that you go through the road at night. What struck me was the commerce at night. So the town is asleep, but the entire road network has got commerce up and running. So people are getting jobs, people are getting fed. There's VAT happening there, but there are no roads. Eventually, you see insecurity, people shooting in the air because So it's got to go hand in hand, And I think that if you get this right, if you have a state that is really up and going, night buses can even take you work during the day. You take a night bus from Imo to whatever. It's commerce has got to go hand in hand. The government has to do its own, and the private sector goes where it sees money being deployed. The private sector is profit motive. The government has got to take the risk, take their own FARC as a seed fund, and create the conditions for the private sector to come in. In effect, subsidize the private sector to come in. If you just tell the private sector, go and do a bus service between two major cities, a lot of risk there. So de-risk it. Put the roads there, mark the rails, put the street lights, so people can go and invest. That's my take on that.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right there. But I want to ask more question because just building on what you said. With incentivizing private investments or private capital in infrastructure, maybe you could touch on this. Where do you see the balance with tolling, where you're offering private companies to build out large road projects with the opportunity to put a toll on there, and balancing that versus the government doing the work of leveraging their FAC or leveraging some public capital to raise on the international market? Is there a risk with tolling? Or what?
I don't think
too much toll on public infrastructure.
I think in the end, people are not afraid of tolling, but the amount you're going to toll them with. If you go to South Africa, you just go through. You don't even stop. You just go straight through. It charges you. You can't toll in Nigeria if you don't have unique identifiers. So your license plate has got to be attached to you. Yeah. Literally. So if you have a toll on Lagos-Ibadan Express Road and you don't stop, you just scans your license plate, it charges you, which is how it's done really going forward now. And you are charging one naira. Even if you charge 1 naira, nobody notices that toll. But you're going to make the same billions. I think it's this toll of 300 naira per toll. You go from Lekki Phase 1 to the third roundabout. You're supposed to pay for 3 tolls, for instance. And you're charging 20 naira. Of course, people are going to notice it. But I still think if you charge 5 naira, 10 naira per toll, and it's just this electronic toll, chop, it's just charging you, everyone will pay. They'll be 100% compliant, and you'll still make the billions. Because it's a 25-year, 30-year project in it. So why are you charging $300 naira today? It's because you want to pay off a 4-year contract under the terms of a governor. We're back to this political timeline again. They would have to do this project within 4 or 8 years because the governor wants to make sure he closes that loop before he leaves office. So a toll that should be for 25 years, you fast forward it to 8 years, which then means the per car toll goes up to whatever. And that's why we have all this expensive, really. What's wrong with 5 naira toll? If 10 cars go 15 naira, how much is that? And you're doing it every day. Cars are just passing your toll every day. Why can't you do that? Why must it be 1,000? I don't know.
Yeah, but I'd love to get your take on where you see the tolling with Nigeria's current condition. Is there something that's a viable option? I know Carlos put the deficit on why it would be a problem.
Yeah, for tolled roads, I would say they do have places where they're useful. If we look at China, for example, most of their major highways, if not all of them, are all tolled, and but those are, I don't remember like what the toll is, but those are mostly government run highways. And if you look at another country that also has a lot of toll roads, which is Japan, a lot of private roads, you see the private roads tend to cluster around urban centers. They're very short, close to either Tokyo, Osaka, or they leave the rest of the highway system linking those regions like a long distance to the public sector. And that's because you get more turnover in the urban roads than you do on those long stretch pieces of highway. So in terms of tolling, the short urban routes are more lucrative for a private investor to operate than, for example, if you want to connect Lagos to Onitsha with a toll road. The tolls will likely not cover the cost of operating the road. You're going to be in a deficit, and that's not going to be a lucrative endeavor for a private investor to go into. But just as the private operator of the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway, that is where it's lucrative because you have a lot of throughput and the distance is very short. But yeah, like Kalu said, the tolls have to be reasonable, and the roads have to be maintained properly. And also, I don't remember them updating their toll collection. Have they moved to electronic tolling yet, or we still pay by the toll booth?
You have those little things you stick on your windscreen, but that is just a prepaid. The way it should be, Sonny, you know how is when you register with the FIRS. The FIRS has your number plate. Attach that number plate to your BVN. So that way, once you go past, you don't have to put it reads who the car is. It just sends you a bill. You don't have to collect the bill on the spot. You can pay monthly if you want, daily if you want, but it just sends you the bill as you go through. So you don't stop. Absolutely. And then it's a free way. You just go straight through. It charges you. If you want to pay at the end of the day, fantastic. You go to a booth and you pay. But if you did it that way, it takes away most of the, make it very, very cheap, make it seamless. I think that's the way to do it.
I think it actually contributes to making it even cheaper.
Yeah.
It reduces the friction.
You don't need people to collect it. You don't need people to collect the bills. You don't need to hire people. If you don't pay, the thing it catches you, they can track you back to where you were. They have your BVN, they have your number plate, they have your address. They give you a COT bill. You have to pay. But that's just the way you have to look at it. Some guys are waiting. Go ahead.
Just my further question. Generally, I don't know if you do have this information, how the difference in performance between PPP projects and strictly public projects in Nigeria, is there any trends you observe and how they perform long term, and could you maybe give us a sense versus what happens more on the international stage, where the PPP projects have a place or that have see better performance in certain contexts, or just it depends on just the country itself?
Yeah, for PPP projects, just as the situation with the public operator giving out a transport route for a single private transport operator to operate. The performance or the success of that PPP depends heavily on the public partner and how the public partner executes. In Nigeria, the PPP infrastructure projects, they have a bad track record. They either deliver poor quality, they're not delivered on time, they're overpriced. And if you look at all our public transport infrastructure, most of it is government funded, it's public funded. PPP has not really delivered any usable transport infrastructure in Nigeria. And unfortunately, there is this mindset that PPP is the way, and there's this, I don't know, PPP hysteria going on in Nigeria where everything is PPP this, PPP that. And when you look at the projects that have gone through that PPP route, and they really haven't delivered in Nigeria. Because it depends on the public partner and how the public partner handles that project. In Nigeria, publicly funded infrastructure is the only way that we have actually gotten infrastructure. Yes, it's bad. Yes, we have issues with it. But the PPP hasn't really done much for us.
Okay. And that's the trend is similar abroad, or is that?
Well, it depends on the region. So for different countries, depending on how the public partner executes the project, yes, it works well. In places like, for example, if I use the Nordic countries, where they have some form of PPP arrangements for infrastructure projects, but the way it is executed and handled, the risk. Okay, there's one thing. The risk is held in the public sector. The public sector assumes the risk of the project. And they tend to work better than, for example, the UK, which tends to offload the risk onto the private partner, which leads to cost explosions and all the other craziness. And the same thing with Nigeria. The Nigerian PPP projects, they tend to offload the risk onto the private partner. And then we have a whole bunch of issues. So in running PPPs, the public partner has to assume the risk of the project, and then it has to be executed properly. Right now, the way a lot of the PPPs are executed in Nigeria, where they push all the risk onto the private partner, that doesn't really give us any, and it only leads to higher cost projects, lower quality projects. Okay. And we don't get much out of it.
Tony, if you guys might, I'll just get a few guys that have been waiting to put a word in there. I think, Tony, we're at the closing stage of the conversation now. Let me get Ayodeji. I've got Ayodeji, then we'll get Oxley, then we'll get Abba. So Ayodeji, Oxley, then we'll get Abba. Ayodeji, you've got the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening in my time zone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're listening from. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I came here to learn, and I've learned a lot. I also want to appreciate the host for bringing up this space. It's quite enlightening. Okay, I just want to drop a few points. One of which is I'll touch on the issue of tolling. I will also touch on the issue of what mode of transportation should best be chosen for the economic development if Nigeria were to adopt such approach to our economic development. Like most of the speakers before have said, I also would like to agree that rather than trying to put the rail system in place, I think the funds should be more focused on rehabilitating transportation, the road projects, making the roads more durable, more usable for people, especially in the rural areas where, as a matter of fact, the transportation system actually solves a lot of problems. For example, the major reason why prices of food items will go up is the fact that, apart from the insecurity in the country, the fact that most of the produce that are in rural areas find it difficult to get to urban centers where they can easily be distributed nationwide. And that likely tells on the cost of items as well as distribution availability and all of those things. So if the road system can actually be made to function effectively, I think that would also put all of that in check. And then also, it definitely would generate more jobs for the Nigerian people. I heard somebody say that the tolling system is it viable, like considering the current situation of the Nigerian people. But I believe that with good road network, there will be more economic activities on the side of the people. A lot of people will be able to get to their places of business, and then, of course, more businesses will come up because, like somebody said earlier that he took a night trip and he saw that there was a lot of commerce going on at night. If you are the person that frequents Lagos Benin road, you will see that road barely sleeps because both day and night people are on the road. You see people selling bread. You get to filling station. You see people still cooking food and all those things. And these are the things that can also, if we're talking about tolling, if the standard of living can improve, tolling wouldn't be a problem because, like somebody has suggested, it doesn't have to be overbloated. Let it be something affordable, something that can easily be charged from the person's account. So you don't even we don't have to form long queues at the toll gates to make payments. We just drive through and everything is sorted. So yes, the road transport system. And then talking about private PPP, that's the public-private partnership. Like somebody had said earlier, oftentimes the public sector pushes the risk to the private sector, and that in itself is one major reason why the private sector would push back. He cited the example of ABC Transport. Not only ABC Transport, there was a time that GU, Okeke and Sons was doing most of the East runs, and we used to feel comfortable then traveling at night because the security system in the country wasn't as bad as this. But even at that, the roads were discouraging. So eventually it all boils down to, if we're discussing transportation system with regards to economic development, it all comes back to the road network. Basically, the road network, in my own opinion, solves a lot of those problems. I would yield the mic at this point. I just thank you for everything that has been said so far.
Yeah, that was a good recap. I appreciate that. Good recap on that. Let's get, I think it was Abba, then we'll get Oxley. I know who was going to go first. Oxley?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for giving the mic. I'll just ask one question and make one comment. So My comment is about the tram system. A couple of places where tram has been used. I don't think tram has been planned anywhere around Nigeria in terms of the design, of our system. So, and I don't know how tram can be retrofitted into Nigerian roads because I don't think it's anywhere in the plan, and I stand to be corrected. And most of the places we have seen it in Europe, they are easy to operate. They are very, they are easy. Some of them even at some point go across the road, run on grass. They are quite very easy moving about. I don't think that Nigeria has tram in our system, and I don't think for us to retrofit that into our system, we'll have to start breaking all our roads and all of that. So that's one side. Secondly, I heard what you said around Onitsha ports. I just wanted to ask a question. Are you in any way suggesting that Onitsha port is not viable? Because I'm not sure I heard you.
But there's a port there, and doesn't get a lot of volume. So there's something wrong, right? There's something wrong with what we have right now.
The part that wasn't viable, like I'm not sure whether you got that well.
Your audio is not that good, sir. I don't know if you want to fix that audio.
Can you hear me now?
Actually, can you fix the audio? There's something off with the audio. Hello?
Okay, Carlo, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know whether you got my question. I said, are you in any way suggesting that Onitsha port is not viable?
Yeah, I'm saying that the port is there, but there's no volume going to that port. So I'm just looking at the status today. It's not functional as expected. So there's something going on there.
I'm thinking that in the bridgehead where that port is, there are so many businesses in Onitsha. There are people rail their containers on the road from Lagos.
No, but that's not the question you're asking. That's not the question. The question is the port functional? The port is not active. That's the point.
No, I'm saying, no, you are saying it's not functional because it's not viable.
No, I'm saying it's not viable because it's functional, but it's not viable. The port is there, but it's not being used. That's what I'm saying. We know Onitsha needs a port. We know the market is there. We know there's transshipment. We know all that. But I'm saying that particular federal port, inland port in Onitsha right now, it doesn't get a lot of volume.
Because I'm thinking the reason is the River Niger on it is not dredged. So certain ships will not be able to come there. And also, there is no rail. There's no rail line that terminates at that port. I don't think there is any.
I hear you. You're right. I'm just saying that in the end, it's got to be a barge can get there, right? And I know
a barge can get there.
One or two barges go there. The point I'm making is that you would think that port will have more volume today than it does. That's just what I'm saying. And the fact is that
you are correct. I think it's the federal government that kept it in that situation. They don't see any need to make it viable. They don't see any need to get it to work. And there are so many reasons. I think much of the reason is even political. But my worry is why is the state government not doing anything about it? That's my worry.
Okay, I mean, once it enters politics, it's difficult to actually get what's going on. But I'll say this, right? The private sector has got to show the way. If that federal one is not working, Anambra with Delta, with the state downhill, Warri can do something on their own. I don't know how much power they have, but they can do something. Delta is now APC, Abi. Anambra is very, very close to the president. If they go see him and they say there's 2020 something election coming up, this is what we need. We need to make the sport functional. It helps their state. It helps the president. It helps Nigeria. I'm just speaking plainly here. So I don't see why it wouldn't work. A Delta port, Onitsha port helps the economy of Delta, Anambra, and Warri. So it's a win-win across the board that they can do if they wanted to do it. So I'm just saying that.
I agree with you.
All right. So, but do you have any question for Tonami? Okay, let's get, then last is going to be Abba. Abba, last boy, you've got the floor, then we'll move to the other three folks. Abba, go ahead.
Okay, Carlo, thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, if you do speak up, I would appreciate it, but I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so I would have to ask Tonami a couple of questions. Earlier on when you were speaking, Tonami, you made mention of the waterways being cut off. Like once you get to Lokoja, there's nothing happening in the western direction. It's only the eastern direction that you can use. That's the Benue. I really had high hopes for the inland waterways for Nigeria. I was with Carlo when he was talking about using the waterways to get to as far as Sokoto and the south. So it's a bit surprising. I would like to understand why you say, is it because of dams, the two dams on the Niger after Lokoja? And if that is the case, is there no other way to probably transload batches from one end to the other? That's the first. And then what would you say is the implication of this coastal highway on our inland waterways, right? Because it worries me a lot building a highway from Lagos across hundreds of kilometers of swampland to Calabar, where you will not connect it with any major city other than Lagos, Port Harcourt, and I think Calabar, or maybe Eket, I'm not sure. But if they do that, there will be tons of bridges. Won't those bridges be cutting off our inland waterway with the sea? Because since we've been speaking about it, inland waterway, we've made mention batching containers from Lekki inland up to Onitsha and Co. Don't you think that's a problem? And if that would be a problem, how do we solve that problem? Then lastly, I know you are not just into transportation, you're also into energy. How do you think how best do you think we can use solving our transportation problems in Nigeria to improve our energy? Because I know that for Nigeria to industrialize, basically this is my opinion, I don't think I'm sitting on the part, but we need to solve the energy problem, the transportation problem, and maybe steel. I think steel is the thing that I am pretty much aware that would help the country industrialize. So how do you think we can use our transportation issues? Say we solve a transportation problem, how do you think that can translate to giving us better energy? This time around, I'm talking about things like pipelines and whatnot. Thank you very much.
Did you get all that, Tonami? Tonami, did you get all that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
That was about last, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those questions. Yeah, for the first one regarding the waterways, the geography of the rivers north of Lokoja, you have rapids, so you have steep drop-offs. So if you're going to, so the river you can't navigate via a waterborne vessel without using lifts or elevator. You're going to need to build barge elevators to take the vessels to the higher level, and you have lots of them in rapid succession. So in that scenario, the slowdown and the cost of building those elevators and the slowdown in the movement of goods, it's not really worth the effort. You'll be better off if you build a parallel railway along the river than to transport goods. You hit a rapid, then you have to elevate. You have to get on an elevator. You hit another rapid, get on an elevator, and so it's just the geography. It just makes it unviable. It's to transport via water through the northern reaches of the Niger River. In terms of the other question of the coastal way, the coastal Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, and how that interferes, how the bridges will interfere with inland waterway traffic. As long as the bridges are built with enough clearance, then it's not an issue. But if they don't take clearance for vessels into consideration, that is when it becomes an issue. So you have, I don't think we have a major, we don't have a major transport, water transport corridor with a bridge crossing. But in other countries, for example, Mozambique just built a bridge across the waterway, and I think it is right now the longest suspension bridge in Africa. And in the bridge, they cost more because the bridge has to be higher. So the bridge has a 60 meter or a 65 meter water clearance. So even the tallest ships can go underneath the bridge. For barges don't require that much height. Barges can go under bridges with 11 to 15 meter height. That's sufficient. And for other smaller vessels. So as long as they have a minimum of 15 meter height water clearance, then that's not a problem. If they did not put that into consideration, that's when it becomes an issue. For how transportation can solve energy, I would say for transportation, for example, in terms of real transportation, I always advocate for electrification because it allows you to operate. It gives you lower operating costs. It allows you to move more traffic for lower cost than operating with diesel. And also you have electric trains, electric locomotives that have lower maintenance than diesel trains. So you just have lower operating costs, and the initial cost of installation is not that much different from the cost of a diesel. But in terms of energy, for those, they need their own infrastructure. Like we need the pipelines to get the gas to where it's needed. We need transmission lines to get the electricity to where it's needed. And so we just have to invest in the pipeline infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, distribution infrastructure to meet our electricity demands. And that can go hand in hand because railways are easier to electrify than to distribute electricity to a bunch of distributed customers within the city, because you just have one massive customer that you can just electrify at designated substation nodes along the rail line. So yes, they can be integrated, but I wouldn't say transport. I would say it's the other way around, that improving our energy infrastructure will benefit our transport infrastructure, because you need electricity for most things, to power a port, to power the trains, to power so many other things. You need electricity for that. And that's all I have.
All right, I hear you. Let's just do it real quick and just get to a few guys that have been waiting to speak. I've got Enwomase, I've got Rifando, and yeah, let's do those two because they just to make sure that they get a sense of the autonomy. Tonami, thank you so much for staying with us for the whole 3 hours. It's a long play podcast that we do, so I want to appreciate you. So, Enwomase, you've got the floor. After you, we've got Rafindo, and then we'll sort of come back to Tonami to just give us closing remarks. So go ahead, sir.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You got the floor.
Oh, thanks very much. Tonami, it's cool to catch you here. Anytime I look at your tweets, I just think that, you should actually be our Minister of Transport, it's 2025. Let me drop my questions. The first question is, you talk about, how 2 very important pieces of infrastructure that can really move the needle when it comes to Nigeria, which is 1, the Lagos to Maiduguri Highway, and 2, the Lagos-Onitsha Port Harcourt Railway. Now, for the Lagos-Maiduguri Highway, what nodes is it going to pass through? What major cities and towns and whatever? That's a question there. Then secondly, how will a railway from Lagos to Onitsha to Port Harcourt affect the air freight business? Because even from your analysis, that's one of the most profitable routes for air flights. So is there not what do you think around that whole situation? Secondly, the procurement challenges when it comes to projects. We've been having, I think Uncle Carlos talked about it before, how there are lots of projects that turn into forever projects. It's been long you actually really hear of brand new projects, that are really moving the needle. It's always a project all in the budget, all over and over again. So what do you think about that? The effect of how, I know it's political space, but it needs to be said, how the procurement challenges interfere with our state of development when it comes to building out this infrastructure. Then my last question, you've talked about the viability of routes, population clusters, business activity, and all that. But have we also, I'm from Delta, so the Warri Port and all those kind of things. So, but can't we also look at it from the angle of investing in productivity to make infrastructure viable? You understand? So instead of coming for a port, first of all, you've sort of focus on building industrial activity around that area that incentivize the need. So around this our 8 states, what clusters do you feel that that makes a whole lot of sense to be looking forward to? Just like the Onne Port, is linked to oil and gas logistics. For example, Warri Port, increase the viability of whatever expansion or whatever by concentrating some kind of industrial activity so that it stimulates some kind of demand and all that and viability. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot for those questions, Enwomase. Let's see. For the first one regarding the Lagos-Maiduguri Highway, the nodes that it goes through, that I think it should go through. So you have the currently the Lagos. It will intersect with the Lagos-Ibadan Highway, and then it will start around Abeokuta, intersect the Lagos-Ibadan Highway, bypass Ibadan, go through in between Akure and Ado-Ekiti, and then go through. I think it goes through the cement of Obajana, the cement plant in Kogi, and then goes through Abaji in Abuja, and then intersect with the Abuja-Kefi highway and goes through Jos, and then it will from Jos and then to Bauchi. From Bauchi, it will just use the remaining stretch of the A2 highway. That's from Bauchi to Maiduguri. So you just expand the capacity or the grade of that highway. And for the entire corridor just has to be 6 lanes, six-lane corridor. The section from Akure to Lagos can be expanded to 8 lanes, but the rest from Akure to Maiduguri